fervently absorbing the spiritual veins from beneath, converting them into the power of the formation to counteract the aura emitted by the gigantic apparition. Time flows inexorably. 2 millennia pass like fleeting shadows. Ding. The fusion of 2/3 of the Chaos Demon Ape's bloodline is complete. Ding. The punch-shattering system has successfully upgraded to version 20. Version update details roar. Almost simultaneously with the system's notification, the half-solidified great ape behind Tong Yi suddenly howls towards the heavens. This voice carries a boundless sense of unwillingness, intertwined with the joy of rebirth. Crack. Boom. At the moment the great ape howls, the Nine Palaces' true fire array shatters violently. The sound waves surge forth, resonating through the cosmos, echoing endlessly. Instantly, within a radius of 100,000 miles, all living beings tremble in fear and drop to their knees, quaking in terror. At this moment, Tong Yi slowly opens his eyes. Chapter 45. The world where only the Kunpeng is wounded has been achieved to his astonishment. After merging with the bloodline of the six-eared macaque, the system underwent an update. Tong Yi feels elated within. This fusion has yielded significant rewards. Firstly, the system has been upgraded, seemingly connected to the bloodline of the six-eared macaque. Previously, relying solely on the system allowed him to shatter with a single punch in a simplistic and brutal manner. Now, however, the circumstances have dramatically changed. Primarily, he can now perceive all things. In other words, akin to playing a game, the system can discern the attributes of all entities and provide a data panel. Secondly, he has gained the insight of truth. Previously, to shatter the bloodline of the six-eared macaque, he had to employ spatial laws and mental scanning, expending considerable effort. Now, he can opt to shatter the minute parts of an individual. While these two functions may seem inconsequential, they significantly enhance convenience and instill a sense of hope within Tong Yi. The fusion of the six-eared macaque enables the system to update and expand its functionalities. What additional capabilities might arise from merging with the red-butt monkey and the spirit luminous stone monkey? It appears that the quest for the red-butt monkey must be expedited. As for the spirit luminous stone monkey, it is said to have emerged during Nuwa's efforts to mend the heavens, so its appearance may still be premature. However, the red-butt monkey remains uncertain. Returning to his gains, beyond the system, he himself has also reaped benefits, acquiring 2 divine abilities, perception of all things and mind reading. The first remarkable ability of the six-eared macaque is the power of eavesdropping, allowing it to overhear the teachings of the Tao ancestor from a terrifying distance that spans the entirety of chaotic space. The second ability, aptly named telepathy, grants it the capacity to discern the innermost thoughts of those weaker than itself. This is indeed an extraordinary gift. With such a power, one can easily ascertain the sincerity or deceit of others. This encapsulates the benefits derived from merging with the bloodline of the six-eared macaque. However, there remains a sense of regret. Tong Yi, upon attempting to harness this power, still finds himself confronted by a bottleneck in his cultivation of the 5 qi returning to origin. The fiery essence of his heart remains elusive, indicating that only by merging with the other 2 bloodlines can he achieve completeness in his lineage and ultimately break through to the great Luo Golden Immortal. This predicament weighs heavily on Tong Yi's mind, leading him to contemplate the necessity of dual cultivation. If his primordial spirit remains stagnant, perhaps it is prudent to focus on refining his physical body. Attaining the status of a quasi-saint through physical cultivation could suffice. As he ruminates, his awareness begins to extend outward. He turns his gaze toward the massive stone beside him, his eyes widening in surprise. The six-eared macaque has awakened and is deeply engrossed in its own cultivation. Curiously, it appears that the bloodline of the Kunpeng carries with it ancestral techniques. The six-eared macaque has successfully re-established itself as an earth immortal, reaching the pinnacle of that realm in a mere 2,000 years. Is that not a bit lacking? Tong Yi muses softly to himself, fully aware of the gravity of his words. Should these sentiments reach the ears of powerful beings across the realms, they would undoubtedly express their discontent. Typically, the path to becoming a celestial immortal requires 10 cycles of the Yuan assembly. Yet the six-eared macaque is on the verge of achieving this in less than 2,000 years. Master, have you awakened? It seems that the sound of Tong Yi's self-reflection has stirred the six-eared macaque from its meditative state. It opens its eyes, brimming with joy upon seeing Tong Yi. It concludes its cultivation, springs down from the stone, and respectfully bows to Tong Yi. In truth, upon awakening and realizing it no longer possessed the bloodline of the six-eared macaque and could no longer listen to the whispers of the world, the creature experienced a moment of confusion. Yet, upon discovering that it now bore the bloodline of the Kunpeng, complete with its own intrinsic techniques and powers, excitement surged within it. The spirit reignited with fervor, casting aside thoughts of the six-eared macaque as an inconsequential memory. Indeed, within a span of just over 1,000 years, It ascended to the peak of Earth immortal status. Had Tong Yi not roused it from its reverie, it might have felt poised to break through to celestial immortal status itself. Consequently, as it gazes at Tong Yi now, it is filled with boundless gratitude and reverence. Although it may be diminutive in stature, the once possessed ability to listen to all things has broadened its perspective significantly. In its eyes, in the vast expanse of the primordial heavens, apart from that singular sage, none could rival the profound abilities of his revered master. The extraordinary feat of erasing bloodlines without inflicting harm, while simultaneously bestowing upon him such formidable lineage, is indeed unparalleled. Who could achieve such a marvel? As Tong Yi gazed upon the obedient six-eared macaque before him, a gentle smile graced his lips. How do you feel? Do you fancy this bloodline? Upon hearing this, the six-eared macaque's face lit up with joy as he exclaimed, Master, your powers are truly boundless. I absolutely adore this bloodline. Not only does it grant me the Kunpeng Heart Method, enabling cultivation to the level of Hunyuan Golden Immortal, but it also bestows a remarkable ability, Fuyoju. I am exceedingly satisfied. Tong Yi blinked, realizing that he had previously been unaware of the myriad benefits this bloodline possessed. However, upon reflection, it seemed entirely reasonable. After all, it was the Kunpeng, an entity that, if it were to remain unscathed, could easily rank among the top 10 of the 3,000 guests at Zixiao. Observing the radiant smile of the six-eared macaque, Tong Yi inadvertently employed his mind-reading ability and discovered that the macaque genuinely cherished this bloodline. A wave of relief washed over him. After all, he had effectively seized the bloodline from the other. His 9 years of compulsory education in his previous life instilled in him the fundamental principle of acting with a clear conscience. If the six-eared macaque was content, then all was well. After all, only the Kunpeng and Emperor Jun bore the brunt of the injury. As he pondered, Tong Yi noticed the six-eared macaque scratching his head and stealing glances at him, his expression betraying indecision, as though he had something to say but hesitated. Since you have become my disciple, there is no need for restraint. Speak freely, Tong Yi encouraged, playfully tapping the macaque's head. The six-eared macaque's eyes sparkled with enlightenment, and he ceased his hesitation. Master, did you truly slay the Kunpeng? Where exactly does our sect originate? How could we possess the ability to translocate bloodlines? Are we perhaps even more formidable than the Zixiao Palace? May I accompany you back to our sect? A torrent of inquiries spilled forth from the six-eared macaque, and upon finishing, he gazed at Tong Yi with innocent eyes, resembling a curious child. This barrage of questions left Tong Yi momentarily flustered. Goodness, this little fellow is relentless. Yet, he did not falter in his responses. Indeed, I was the one who defeated the Kunpeng. Our sect does not reside within the primordial heavens. We are nearly as powerful as the Zixiao Palace. However, your current cultivation level is insufficient. I would be embarrassed to introduce you to your grandmaster. Hearing Tong Yi's candid responses, the six-eared macaque beamed with joy, his expression reflecting the realization of their sect's impressive stature. However, upon hearing the last statement, his lips pouted in discontent. What level of cultivation must I attain for you to take me to our sect, master? He asked with a look of dejection. You should be aware that the second lecture at Zixiao Palace is about to commence. Here's the deal. Once I return from the lecture, if you manage to break through to the true immortal level and successfully transform, I shall take you back to our sect. Upon hearing this, the six-eared macaque was left utterly speechless. True immortal? Successful transformation? Master, do you believe that my talents are akin to those of the Dao ancestor? I have merely accumulated 4,000 years. How could that be possible? The six-eared macaque protested indignantly. How many years did you spend cultivating to reach true immortal? Chapter 46. Bestowed name Lu Air, the venturing Taoist master. How long did it take you to achieve true immortal? I refuse to believe that you attained it in 5,000 years. The six-eared macaque gazed at Tong Yi with a face full of resentment. From the insights gained through the bloodline inheritance, he understood the fundamentals of cultivation. Even with the Kunpeng bloodline, which is 100 times stronger than ordinary bloodlines, he would still require a significant period to reach true immortal. Yet, his master demanded that he ascend from Earth immortal to true immortal in merely 4,000 years. Is this not an unreasonable expectation for a mere monkey? Who could possibly accomplish such a feat? Even Hongjun Daozu could not achieve this. Upon hearing the six-eared macaque's words, Tong Yi did not respond verbally, but raised a single finger. 1,000 years? The six-eared macaque inquired tentatively. In his perspective, if it were 1,000 years, then his master's expectations would not be overly stringent. After all, the student surpasses the teacher, and he ought to be able to progress slightly faster than his master. Tong Yi shook his head. 100 years? The six-eared macaque was stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. Tong Yi continued to shake his head. Then what exactly is it? The six-eared macaque was filled with despair, utterly perplexed. He deemed even 1,000 years to be implausible. Which celestial being could accomplish that? Yet, If not even 1,000 years, surely it cannot be merely 100 years? The corners of Tong Yi's mouth curled into a slight smile as he retracted his finger. Indeed, it is 100 years. What? The six-eared macaque felt as though struck by lightning, standing frozen in shock, staring at his master. In his mind, one phrase echoed repeatedly: impossible, impossible, absolutely impossible. At that moment, the six-eared macaque felt a gentle hand resting upon his head, ruffling his fur. Simultaneously, his master's teasing voice rang in his ears: do not feel inferior. There is no one in this world with a comprehension as extraordinary as yours truly. The corners of the six-eared macaque's mouth twitched. He conceded that he was filled with doubt regarding the veracity of his master's words, and began to retract the initial impression of his master as unfathomably profound and powerful. Unbeknownst to him, Tong Yi heard his thoughts clearly. This will not do. After finally taking on a disciple, how could he allow such an impression to linger? Very well. When I return, if you reach the pinnacle of celestial immortal, I shall take you to meet your grandmaster. However, you must undergo the process of cultivation once more. After Tong Yi spoke, without waiting for the six-eared macaque's response, a thread of purple light emanated from his fingertip and directly entered the center of the six-eared macaque's brow. Initially reluctant to undergo the process of cultivation again, the six-eared macaque felt an influx of new techniques within his mind. Suddenly taken aback, joy swiftly followed. Although this technique appeared to be merely an introductory level and bore no recorded name, the profound aura emanating from it instantly rendered the techniques of the Kunpeng bloodline into mere dust. Grateful for the bestowal of this method from my esteemed master, the six-eared macaque, his eyes shimmering with starlight, gazed at Tong Yi, feeling an overwhelming surge of excitement. He believed that the enigmatic image of his master should remain cherished in his heart. If the techniques of the Kunpeng bloodline were of superior quality, then what his master had just imparted could only be deemed exceptional, and this was merely an introductory chapter. At that moment, the six-eared macaque's longing for his sect reached its zenith. He yearned to meditate and refine his skills, eager to break through to the celestial immortal realm and witness the legendary sect for himself. Hearing that his image in the rebellious disciple's heart had finally returned to grandeur, Tong Yi nodded in satisfaction and spoke again. In traversing the vast expanse of the wilderness, lacking knowledge of formations renders one no different from a lost wanderer. Thus, I shall bestow upon you another insight into formations. Upon finishing, he flicked his finger once more. A stream of light darted forth from his fingertip, swiftly entering the six-eared macaque's brow. An introductory comprehension of the laws of formations? Was it not said that only those above the Great Luo could grasp such laws? This can indeed be granted. As he felt an influx of insights regarding formations materializing within his mind, the six-eared macaque was left utterly dumbfounded, his fur standing on end, as if every hair was expressing his astonishment. He had heard tales of prodigies who could comprehend laws in advance, while still at the Tai Golden Immortal stage. He had also heard of exceptional beings who, upon entering the world, possessed extraordinary mastery of laws, understanding them from the outset. Yet, he had never heard of such knowledge being forcibly imparted to others. Insights into formations, who among them did not require years of dedicated cultivation and resonance with the heavens to comprehend. Some, even with shallow attainments, could spend a lifetime without ever grasping the intricacies of formations. This was not a treasure. It could not be so casually gifted away. Yet, regardless of the tumultuous waves of astonishment within the six-eared macaque's heart, everything in his mind told him that this was indeed real. And all of this stemmed from his master. Master. Just moments ago, he had been reckless and doubted his master's transcendent abilities. In the disciple's heart, there was none above the master in this world. Even those so-called sages could not compare. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. But as he reached the final statement, Tong Yi swiftly covered his mouth. Dear disciple, such words must not be spoken lightly. Tong Yi glanced timidly toward the heavens. This foolish monkey could boast of himself, but he must not belittle his own master. If they were both to be cast down from their sect, it would be disastrous. Master, you need not belittle yourself. The six-eared macaque attempted to speak further, only to be interrupted by Tong Yi. Enough. I have bestowed upon you the technique and granted you the insights into formations. Tong Yi raised his hand to halt the conversation, genuinely reluctant to linger with this foolish disciple too long, fearing that he might catch the same folly. I truly must attend to my teachings now. Do you have any further requests? Lu Er, the six-eared macaque, blinked his eyes, a flicker of reluctance shining through. Unlike Tong Yi, he bore the memories of 2 lifetimes. And though he had only emerged into the world a few thousand years ago, his mind remained youthful and unseasoned. Initially unencumbered, he reveled in his solitary existence. Yet now, with a master by his side, the bond he had forged made his departure feel profoundly sorrowful. Nevertheless, He understood the significance of his master's teachings and dared not impede his opportunities. As for requests, he obediently bowed to Tong Yi, expressing, "Disciple wishes to ask master for a name." After a contemplative pause, Tong Yi responded, "Since you are six-eared, henceforth, you shall be named Lu Er. Your Dao title shall be Tong Feng Dao Ren. Is that satisfactory?" "Yes, yes," Lu Er exclaimed without a moment's hesitation. In his eyes, any name bestowed by his master, endowed with vast powers, could only be exceptional. "I have a name now. From this day forth, I shall be called Lu Er, Tong Feng Dao Ren." Lu Er joyously leaped onto a boulder, exulting in his newfound identity. Tong Yi, with an amused smile, executed the 9 palace steps once more to restore the formations of this place, leaving behind the essence of the 9 heavens' true fire, and setting up a spirit-gathering array. After completing these tasks, he imparted a few final instructions to Lu Er before transforming into a bolt of lightning and vanishing into the void. "I will surely fulfill my mission," Lu Er proclaimed resolutely, gazing at the spot where Tong Yi had disappeared. He then settled into a meditative posture, commencing his study of the foundational verses of the Purple Cloud Heart Sutra. Am I hearing the echoes of the primordial great array? High in the sky, not long after Tong Yi had taken flight, he abruptly halted, his gaze filled with confusion as he peered downward. Chapter 47. The Three Immortals of Penglai. Stealing from the Eastern King's household? What am I hearing? The echoes of the primordial great array? In the vast expanse of the Eastern Sea, Tong Yi, en route to the Eastern Heavenly Gate, suddenly paused mid-flight. He looked down, his eyes sparkling with purple light, betraying a hint of hesitation. The reason was simple. With his naked eye, his divine sense, and even through the purple cloud divine eyes, he could discern nothing remarkable below. All that lay in sight was the tranquil and expansive sea. Yet, perplexingly, within the depths of his listening abilities, he perceived an unusual echo emanating from below. It was not of ordinary origin, but rather from a primordial great array. The primordial great array could signify 2 possibilities. One was a formidable being who had comprehended the profound intricacies of array formations and had thus established a grand array. Such entities were exceedingly rare. Even Tong Yi had only encountered the primordial 8 trigrams array of Fuxi and the Taoist array at the Purple Cloud Palace. The other possibility was that there resided within it an unmanifested primordial treasure, akin to the emergence of the Hongmeng measuring ruler. Could it be? Was there a primordial treasure below? Tong Yi's eyes sparkled with excitement, never anticipating such a delightful surprise. The East Sea is vast and rich in resources. It is entirely reasonable for a primordial treasure to emerge. With this thought in mind, he descended without a moment's hesitation towards the tranquil surface of the sea. However, as his form neared the height of 1,000 zhang, a protective barrier of an array materialized, halting Tong Yi's descent. Name: Fangzhong Immortal Island. Details: formed from chaotic fragments that fell into the primordial world, it inherently possesses a mysterious and potent chaotic force, having absorbed the essence of heaven and earth over countless years to develop sentience, and naturally forming a primordial protective array around the island. Status: the Immortal Island Array has been refined. Owner: Donghua Taoist. As the array shield emerged, the system's attribute panel was instantly projected before Tong Yi. Goodness! I remember now. Fangzhong Immortal Island. Upon discerning the contents of the panel, Tong Yi's heart surged with excitement. There are 3 immortal islands in the East Sea, Penglai, Yingzhou, and the one before him, Fangzhong Immortal Island. Among them, Penglai is the foremost, being the largest, followed by Yingzhou and Fangzhong, the smallest. After their emergence, the islands were encountered by the East King and subsequently refined. Tong Yi recalled how, during his time in the 33 heavens, the East King had extravagantly employed the 3 light divine water to break the array. At that moment, preoccupied with retrieving the celestial measuring ruler, he had given it little thought. Now, upon reflection, it became evident that the East King had indeed encountered the 3 immortal islands and had refined them. Yet, something was amiss. Why was there only 1 primordial array? Logically, there should be 3, yet he only heard a singular echo. As Tong Yi scrutinized the system panel, a frown creased his brow, and a sudden notion took root in his mind. It was apparent that the Donghua Taoist he had seen in the 33 heavens had an exceedingly flamboyant temperament. If he had indeed succeeded in refining all 3 immortal islands, he would undoubtedly have proclaimed it across the heavens. However, this had not occurred. Coupled with the fact that the primordial array before him belonged to the smallest island, Fangzhong, one could speculate that the other 2 immortal islands had yet to be successfully refined by the Donghua Taoist, who had enclosed them with the current primordial array. As this thought unfolded, Tong Yi became increasingly convinced of its plausibility. How could he allow this opportunity to slip away? Oh, old Dong. The immortal islands are meant for all who encounter them. How can you claim them solely for yourself? He whispered towards the array's luminous barrier, then subtly perked his ears, fully immersing himself in his innate divine powers. If he could eavesdrop on the teachings of the sage from the Purple Cloud's palace, then this mere primordial array would be a trivial matter. Previously, the presence of the grand array had acted like soundproofing, obstructing his hearing. However, as Tong Yi devoted himself to his divine powers, a swift sensation surged through him. Soon, it was as though earplugs had been removed, and he could distinctly hear the echoes within the primordial array. In the next moment, Tong Yi's heart swelled with joy. He truly perceived the existence of the other two celestial islands. Furthermore, he heard that these islands were in a constant struggle, seemingly entangled and suppressed by some force, unable to extricate themselves. Nevertheless, Tong Yi deduced one crucial conclusion. The other two celestial islands had yet to be refined. They remained unclaimed. In that case, I shall not hold back. Old Dong, previously in the heavenly realm, you stated that treasures would find their rightful owners, and the capable would prevail. The three celestial islands are a unity, and having refined only one, if I refine the other two, they shall all belong to me. Very well. Since you choose not to respond, I shall take your silence as acquiescence. Tong Yi boldly proclaimed to the Grand Formation's radiant barrier, speaking with conviction. This declaration primarily served to assuage his own feelings of guilt. As for whether anyone would respond to him, certainly not, for he had clearly discerned moments earlier that no other voices resonated within the Grand Formation. It seemed that the Taoist Donghua had ceased the refinement of the other two celestial islands and had already set off to the Zhixiao Palace for the second sermon. With this thought, Tong Yi directly assumed a cross-legged position, levitating in midair, and retrieved the primordial measuring ruler. As he refined the innate restrictions of this meritorious spiritual treasure, he awaited the commencement of the sermon at the Zhixiao Palace. Once the sermon began, it would be impossible to halt. By that time, even if Taoist Donghua were to learn that someone had breached the grand formation of the celestial island, he would not return promptly. Tong Yi could then devote himself to the refinement of all three celestial islands without concern. Moreover, having traversed the primordial wilderness for so long, he had yet to establish a dwelling of his own. His existence was transient. Perhaps the heavenly Tao could no longer bear to witness his plight, feeling pity for him, which led to his encounter with the three celestial islands of Penglai. Tong Yi mused to himself, acknowledging the greatness of the primordial measuring ruler in his hands. Truth be told, he felt quite remorseful towards this meritorious spiritual treasure. Whoever possessed it would undoubtedly seek to refine it at the earliest opportunity. In the world of the primordial wilderness, when celestial beings engage in combat, the one with a higher cultivation level does not necessarily guarantee the defeat of the weaker opponent. This is due to the existence of many treasures in this realm that defy the natural order. These treasures possess a ranking system, categorized from high to low as follows: innate supreme treasures, innate spiritual treasures, innate meritorious spiritual treasures, acquired supreme treasures, and acquired spiritual treasures. Generally, these 5 tiers prevail. This classification is based on this book's premise. The innate supreme treasures and innate spiritual treasures are quite comprehensible. They are treasures that came into being or were nurtured before the opening of the heavens. The innate meritorious spiritual treasures are also understandable. The power of merit birthed by Pangu during the creation of the heavens and the earth, though partially occupied by the 3 clear ones, remains largely unclaimed. Upon merging with various primordial energies, they form different innate meritorious supreme treasures. For instance, the Hongming measuring ruler in Tong Yi's possession exemplifies this. The ultimate treasures of the acquired realm and the spiritual treasures of the acquired realm are, naturally, artifacts forged by the immortals themselves, each possessing varying grades. Regardless of whether these treasures are innate or acquired, they form heavenly prohibitions upon their inception. It is only by completely refining these prohibitions that one can truly master the artifact. The innate treasures possess 81 prohibitions, the innate spiritual treasures, 72. The innate merit spiritual treasures, 63, the acquired treasures, 54, and the acquired spiritual treasures, 45. This explains why, despite having possessed the Hongming measuring ruler for so long, Tong Yi is still unable to utilize it fully. The measuring ruler has 63 prohibitions, none of which he has refined. For a typical immortal, refining even one prohibition requires thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, and the difficulty only escalates with time. However, for Tong Yi, with a decisive punch, one prohibition vanished. Alas, he mused, I must wait another 62 days. How arduous this is. Simultaneously, he employed his listening divine ability, extending it to the celestial realm, directing it toward the Zhixiao Palace. I wonder if the lecture has commenced. He was eager to sneak in. Chapter 48, the commencement of the second lecture. Shattering the great formation of Fangzhong Island. 3,000 years have passed. The second lecture begins. Esteemed guests, please enter the hall to listen. At the entrance of the Zixiao Palace, Yaotai Haoyan proclaimed loudly. Upon hearing this, the 3,000 Zixiao guests, who had long been queuing, swiftly darted into the grand doors. When the sages impart knowledge, it is said to be beneficial, and who would dare to be tardy? Furthermore, although the last session had concluded with the distribution of 6 cushions, who could predict if new opportunities would arise this time? However, to their disappointment, upon entering the grand hall, the 3 pure ones, Niuhua, and the 2 guides took their seats on the cushions. Aside from that, there was no other anomaly. The 3,000 mighty beings felt disheartened, but prudently settled into their previous seats. With the 2 guides absent from causing any mischief, the grand hall remained remarkably tranquil. Soon, Yaotai Haoyan also entered the hall, sitting cross-legged beneath the Dao platform. Where is Hunyuan Daoist? At this moment, the 2 guides could not help but stretch their necks. Glancing around with puzzled expressions, Yaotai Fairy, the guide inquired, "May I ask why Hunyuan Daoist has yet to arrive? I had hoped to pay him a visit." Upon hearing this, Niuhua displayed a flicker of displeasure in her beautiful eyes. Such an esteemed being as Hunyuan Daoist is not someone you can visit at will. The guide's nostrils flared slightly, yet he recognized that Niuhua harbored grievances due to the little monkey incident. He chose to feign ignorance and continued to cast inquisitive glances toward Yaotai. As his words left his lips, it marked the beginning of a sudden commotion within the previously serene hall. Among them, the Daoist of Donghua was the most agitated, exclaiming, "Heavenly Child Haoyan, last time I troubled you to inquire if Daoist Hunyuan would be willing to visit me. Has he responded?" The other powerful beings also chimed in, "Esteemed celestial children, where exactly is Daoist Hunyuan's cave abode? I assure you, it is purely a gesture of goodwill. The disciples of the sage are undoubtedly preoccupied with their affairs. Yet we sincerely hope that Daoist Hunyuan can grace us with his presence amidst his busy schedule. Indeed, Daoist Hunyuan will surely be a neighbor of our generation. We all wish for him to engage more with us." Listening to these voices, Yaoqi furrowed her brows, finding the clamor bothersome. Initially, she had no intention of addressing them. However, just moments ago, Tong Yi had conveyed through a communication jade talisman that he had encountered a fortuitous opportunity and would not attend the teachings this time. This piqued Yaoqi's curiosity. What kind of opportunity could be deemed more significant than the teachings of the master? Yet, to avoid revealing her senior brother's whereabouts, Yaoqi spoke, "My senior brother is in seclusion and will not be attending the teachings. The master is about to emerge. Please maintain silence." Haoyan shot a glare at the celestial beings Jane and Jundi, feeling a sense of annoyance. Why are these 2 so bothersome? As Yaoqi's youthful voice echoed, the grand hall instantly fell silent. They were both astonished and envious. Behold, this is the distinction. Such audacity. The sage's teachings are so paramount that one can simply choose not to attend. Surely, it must be that the sage is providing him with private tutelage. The powerful beings dared not express any dissent, for Yaoqi's final remark carried considerable weight. At this moment, the Daoist of Donghua rose and addressed the assembly, "Esteemed friends, since Daoist Hunyuan has not arrived, let us not press the matter. When he emerges from his seclusion, I shall personally extend an invitation and certainly arrange a banquet to welcome you all." Upon hearing this, the eyes of the powerful beings sparkled with excitement. They all clasped their hands in salute towards the Daoist of Donghua. "It's a deal, my friend. We shall brave any challenge for this invitation. Daoist of Donghua, do not forget to invite me. I await the invitation, for your cave abode must be extraordinary." Listening to the flattery, the Daoist of Donghua nodded and smiled in response, then sat down with a contented expression. In his mind, plans were already taking shape. After the teachings conclude, he would return to Fangzhong Island and hasten the refinement of the other 2 celestial islands. Once the 3rd session of teachings ends, he would invite the disciples of the sage to his cave abode. In this manner, his path in the celestial realm would surely be unobstructed. As for whether he could secure their attendance, he chuckled to himself, believing that today, with the backing of numerous powerful beings, his invitation would carry weight. Would the sage's disciples disregard such expectations? At worst, he could always offer a few drops of the divine water of the 3 lights. Thus did he contemplate. The smile at the corner of Donghua Daoist's mouth became increasingly difficult to conceal, and his impatience grew ever more fervent. At that moment, a brilliant purple light suddenly illuminated the Dao platform, and the figure of the saint promptly took his seat. The second lecture commenced. The voice of Hongjun Daozu resonated through the grand hall, cold and detached. He wasted no words upon his arrival. He began to impart his teachings without inquiring about Tong Yi's absence. The numerous eminent beings present grew increasingly convinced that this saint was undoubtedly bestowing enlightenment upon his fellow cultivator of the primordial unity. In an instant, as the saint began to expound, the heavens seemed to rain down wonders, and extraordinary phenomena re-emerged. The many powerful figures could only calm their minds, no longer allowing their thoughts to wander. After such a long wait, the lecture had finally begun. Tong Yi, seated in the void, sensed a slight movement at his ears and opened his eyes. Though he could utilize the six-eared divine hearing to listen to the saint's teachings, he remained stuck at the final barrier of the 5 Qi returning to origin due to a deficiency in his bloodline. This was a fundamental issue. No matter how much he heard, it would be of no use. Thus, he had little interest in eavesdropping, as the allure of the 3 Immortal Island was far greater. He stowed away the golden, resplendent measuring stick of heaven, which radiated an aura of primordial slaughter, and gazed joyfully at the formation's luminous barrier below. During this time, he had already shattered the remaining 63 layers of restrictions and gained insights into the formation. Unfortunately, he had reached a stalemate in his understanding of the formation, and this newfound knowledge was insufficient to elevate him to a higher level. He pondered what rewards might come from breaking this formation. Could it assist him in achieving mastery? Without a moment's hesitation, Tong Yi rose and unleashed a powerful punch. Boom. Crack. Ding. Successfully shattered the Abbott's Immortal Island Great Formation. Ding. Obtained feedback. Abbott's Immortal Island Formation Disc. At the moment the notification sounded, the Grand Formation's barrier shattered in response. Tong Yi's figure flickered across the skies 9 times, each step imprinting the runes of the formation with the 9 palace steps. Ultimately, he cast the measuring stick of heaven into the formation's core, establishing a new formation. Though it could not compare to the original innate Great Formation, the presence of the primordial measuring stick at the formation's heart granted it considerable power. Having accomplished this, he lowered his gaze to observe the Abbott's Immortal Island laid bare before him. A single glance left Tong Yi dumbfounded. What the heck? This Donghua is truly talented. Suddenly, Donghua Taoist, who had been immersed in the teachings, felt a surge and spat out a mouthful of old blood. Damn it! Who shattered my Immortal Island's great formation? He bellowed in furious outrage. But in the next moment, he was silenced by the West Hua Fairy, as the saint's voice ceased and the extraordinary phenomena dissipated. Countless gazes turned toward Donghua, each filled with boundless resentment. On the island of resentment, the esteemed master, have you lost your mind? The sage is imparting wisdom. What are you doing? The fairy of Shihua, her visage etched with terror, hastily covered the mouth of the Taoist Donghua, forcefully suppressing the blood he had coughed up. Simultaneously, she communicated urgently with him. She was nearly paralyzed with fear. While listening to the teachings, her husband had suddenly spat blood, interrupting the sage's discourse. This was not merely an act of defiance against the sage. It had offended all the formidable beings present. Wait, what island of immortals? You possess an island of immortals, and did not inform me? The fairy of Shihua glared, releasing her grip and pointing an accusatory finger at the Taoist Donghua. As countless gazes turned towards him, Donghua had already grasped the gravity of the situation. He was drenched in cold sweat, his heart a tumult of anger and trepidation. He had abruptly lost contact with the island of the abbot. In a fit of rage, he had momentarily forgotten that he was in the sacred hall of the Zixiao Palace. Now all was lost. The island was gone. The sage had ceased his teachings, and numerous powerful beings were casting furious glances in his direction. At that moment, Donghua felt as though he were on the brink of collapse. Just moments ago, these mighty beings had lavished him with compliments, and now they seemed ready to take his life. Oh, my dear, I will explain everything to you later. Under the scrutiny of countless eyes, Donghua hastily pressed down the delicate hand before him. He then rose and bowed deeply towards the platform, pleading for forgiveness. Sage, please pardon my transgression. Just now, I was beset by a backlash and forgot that I was within the sacred hall. I meant no disrespect, and certainly did not intend to interrupt your teachings. As he spoke, he hurriedly bowed in all directions, seeking forgiveness. Esteemed friends, I humbly ask for your understanding. I apologize for disturbing your contemplation. Upon hearing this, aside from the figure in red at the back who nodded and smiled, the other formidable beings remained visibly displeased, their brows furrowed. Even the 3 pure ones seated at the front exhibited their discontent, casting disapproving glances at the Taoist Donghua. This was akin to a teammate in a ranked match of eternal calamity yanking out the plug at the start of the game. Who could endure such a betrayal? To the powerful beings present, what Donghua had lost was merely an island of immortals, while they might have forfeited a rare opportunity for enlightenment. Whether to cast blame would depend entirely on whether the sage chose to continue his teachings. Should the sage become irate and cease his discourse, they would truly unleash their wrath upon him, reducing him to mere fragments and casting him into the void. With this thought, the many formidable beings turned their attention away from Donghua and instead focused on the platform, where Hongjun's expression remained as unchanging as the ages. Devoid of joy or anger, his voice chillingly indifferent. Are you still listening? Upon hearing these words, the crowd collectively exhaled in relief. This inquiry implied that the sage bore no significant displeasure and would indeed continue his teachings. They all turned back. directing their intense and pressing gazes once more at the Taoist Donghua. It felt as though a voice incessantly echoed, "Are you still listening? If not, then leave." The Taoist of Donghua was rendered uneasy under the weight of those gazes. After a moment of internal conflict, he steeled himself and bowed to Hong Jun, declaring, "I shall continue to listen." "Very well, take your seat," Hong Jun responded, resuming his teachings. Only then did the crowd close their eyes, their minds no longer occupied with blaming the Taoist of Donghua. Although he sat down and shut his eyes, his heart was tumultuous. That celestial island, he had not even mentioned it to his wife. In the vastness of the Eastern Sea, how could anyone discover the island? These questions remained unanswered, and he could only scream inwardly, "Who is it? My Fangzong Island is clearly protected by a grand formation. Who has breached it? The Dragon Clan of the East? Those damn dragons. Inglong, no need to rush. Regardless of who you are, I refuse to believe you can best that creature. Once I finish listening, I shall collect your remains." The Taoist of Donghua was in turmoil, unable to grasp a single word of the teachings. His mind was consumed with a singular worry. Would his actions be exposed? In the Eastern Sea, Tong Yi gazed in astonishment at the entire visage of the celestial island before him. The heart of Fangzong Island had been hollowed out, forming a vast chasm filled with lakes of blood. Countless corpses and skeletons lay piled together, remnants of myriad living beings, both avian and terrestrial. Every deceased creature, whether still possessing flesh or reduced to mere bones, wore a countenance twisted with rage, their resentment palpable. Meanwhile, the other celestial islands, Penglai and Yingzhou, were submerged beneath the lake's depths. What manner of sorcery is this? Blood refinement? How many lives must be extinguished to achieve this? This horrific scene stirred a tempest within Tong Yi. He clutched his nose, his brow furrowed in distress. At that moment, he truly wished to turn away, abandoning the notion of the celestial island altogether. Listening to the myriad wonders of the cosmos is indeed remarkable, enabling one to transcend barriers and traverse chaos. Yet, its flaw lies in the inability to perceive the complete picture. Without sound, there is no echo to be heard. Thus, he had remained unaware of the dire circumstances within Fangzong Island. Had he known, he would have never set foot inside. Not only was the stench unbearable, but the overwhelming resentment emanating from the sea of corpses and lakes of blood was terrifying. How many lives must have been sacrificed to create this? Previously, he had speculated on the means by which the Taoist of Donghua refined the celestial island. After all, a primordial grand formation is not something ordinary people can manipulate. Now, having witnessed the reality, he finally understood. This was indeed blood refinement. Through cruel methods, countless lives were brutally slain, instilling in them a sense of vengeance, transforming them into vengeful spirits. Their corpses and flesh were then piled together, allowing the malevolent forces of this world to corrode the formation. Such methods are exceedingly brutal, yet effective. However, Tong Yi could not help but wonder, from where did the Taoist of Donghua acquire such knowledge? How uncanny it appears, reminiscent of arcane sorcery. Simultaneously, he found himself in a quandary, pondering whether to retain the two celestial islands. Would they become tainted? After all, he was quite fastidious. "Help! Oh, celestial being, save us!" At that moment, two intermittent voices emanated from beneath the cadavers in the blood lake. Tong Yi's gaze flickered, a violet light flaring forth. He suppressed his revulsion, his eyes traversing the grotesque mass of corpses, until he finally discerned the source of the sound at the lake's bottom. There, two hemispherical arrays of light lay inverted, perpetually being eroded by the blood, yet rapidly regenerating. The voices arose from within these luminous shields. They were not human, but rather two ethereal entities. "Oh, celestial being, can you hear our pleas? We beseech you to rescue us. That wretched being has transformed our third brother into blood. We do not wish to be refined by him. Oh, celestial being, I am from the Penglai Island. He is my second brother from the Yingzhou Island. If you can save us, we shall willingly submit to you." As Tong Yi hesitated, the two spiritual entities' fragmented voices reached his ears once more. He dug at his ears and sighed. Clearly, these entities possessed limited intelligence. What was this talk of submission? If I were to intervene, why speak of subservience? Everything here belongs to me. Nonetheless, I am of a compassionate nature and cannot bear to witness your torment. Thus, I shall assist you in escaping this sea of blood. Upon uttering these words, Tong Yi flipped his right hand. A cacophony of crackling sounds erupted as a serpentine arc of purple lightning manifested from his palm, flickering wildly. However, just as he was about to act, an eerie ripple surged through the blood lake, as if something beneath was awakening. Chapter 50. The Corpse Monster of the Blood Lake. Originating from a single finger? What in the world is this grotesque entity? Tong Yi gazed down at the blood lake. The initial ripples escalated into violent undulations, and the entire island began to tremble. In the next instant, a spine-chilling spectacle unfolded. A colossal hand, as large as a dwelling, composed of a chaotic amalgamation of countless corpses and skeletons, erupted from the blood lake. Following closely, the immense form of the corpse monster gradually emerged. Its torso was woven from various severed limbs and putrid entrails. Its head was a nightmarish sight, constructed from an assortment of different beings' eyeballs. These orbs, varying in size and hue, clustered together, all fixated on Tong Yi. As its entire form surfaced from the lake, it dripped with a foul, oozing ichor. Good heavens! Merely gazing at it from a distance sent waves of terror coursing through Tong Yi, compelling him to flee. In his previous life, he had relished watching horror films. Yet this repugnant scene utterly eclipsed all his memories of disgust. What on earth is this abhorrent creature? A demon? Or perhaps a ghost? Tong Yi sealed off his sense of smell and muttered to himself, unable to endure the nauseating stench that pervaded the air. At that moment, the corpse monster, seemingly displeased with Tong Yi's assessment, let out a roar filled with resentment. Instantly, a torrent of blood mist and sound waves surged toward Tong Yi like razor-sharp blades. Begone! With a swift motion of his right hand, the lightning arc, which had previously obeyed him like a docile insect, erupted violently. Boom! In an instant, silver serpents danced wildly. And with a single strike, the lightning arc obliterated all the blood mist and sound blades while maintaining its momentum, charging toward the corpse monster. The monster trembled at this sight, its massive form twisting rapidly in an attempt to evade the oncoming lightning arc. However, the lightning arc was swifter. In the blink of an eye, it struck the side of the corpse monster. Zzz. The moment the lightning arc made contact, a dazzling light erupted, and powerful currents surged chaotically over the monster's body. With a crackle, charred pieces of flesh fell from its colossal form, and thick smoke billowed into the air. The acrid scent of burnt flesh mingled with the odor of decay, saturating the atmosphere. Begone! Tong Yi waved his sleeve with a look of disdain, dispersing the lingering smoke. Although he had sealed off his sense of smell, he estimated that if enveloped by this smoke, he would need to bathe 100 times to rid himself of the stench. As the smoke dissipated, Tong Yi looked down in astonishment. The corpse monster had been reduced to a mere shadow of its former self, with smoke rising from its body. Yet, as the lightning arc waned, severed limbs and arms emerged from the blood lake, climbing onto its form, reinvigorating it. Oh, this is intriguing. Tong Yi found the creature increasingly fascinating, suspecting it to be demonic in nature. However, having never encountered a demon before, he could not make a definitive judgment. It was evident, though, that this entity was connected to the blood lake. If he could annihilate it, he could also summon the immortal islands of Penglai and Yingzhou. Let us see how I shall deplete your life force. Tong Yi's deep gaze shifted dramatically, his left eye shimmering with purple lightning, while his right eye glowed with golden flames. Boom! At that moment, his aura erupted violently. Golden hair began to grow wildly, standing erect. The solidified purple lightning arcs leapt continuously, encircling him. Having attained the thunder obliteration sacred body during his tribulation, and after merging it with his own Nine Heavens flame body, he had now transformed into the Nine Heavens thunder flame body. However, since his transformation, he had refrained from utilizing this power until today, when it finally revealed itself. In that moment, with golden hair and flames, surrounded by thunder, he floated high above, resembling a thunder god. A terrifying pressure filled the surrounding space. Below, the countless eyes of the corpse monster quivered in unison. Oh, have you awakened your intelligence? You even know fear. With a slight upward curl of his lips, Tong Yi wasted no time as he forcefully waved his hands downward. In an instant, an immense surge of thunder coalesced, transforming into a 9-clawed thunder dragon that leapt downwards. In a mere heartbeat, the undead creatures below had yet to react before being engulfed by the dragon. The entire realm was illuminated by the radiant flashes of lightning, and the undead let out anguished cries, writhing upon the blood lake, their wails echoing across the entire island. In stark contrast, Tong Yi maintained a stoic expression, his long fingers deftly manipulating the thunder below. The thunder dragon was not merely a display of skill, but rather a manifestation of the principles he had comprehended. The dragon's form was chosen for its aesthetic appeal and grandeur. It is noteworthy that after his tribulation, his mastery over the thunderous principles reached an unprecedented pinnacle, making it the most advanced among the 3 principles he commanded. With effortless control, he wielded the thunder with the grace of a master artisan. Beneath him, the thunder relentlessly shattered the remnants of the undead, obliterating any chance of their resurgence. The entire blood lake was submerged and ravaged by the tempestuous lightning, evaporating before his very eyes. Below the lake, the pent-up grievances, murky energies, and ill omens accumulated over an indeterminate period began to dissipate under the onslaught of the thunder, visibly lowering the lake's water level. As time passed, the resistance of the undead grew feeble. Its head, composed of countless eyes, began to crumble under the assault of the thunder flames. Eyeballs of varying sizes erupted, dissipating into wisps of smoke. Finally, with a deafening roar, the Blood Lake was entirely desiccated, revealing the once submerged immortal islands of Penglai and Yingzhou, the once formidable form of the undead. Now reduced to a mere fraction of its original self, ultimately collapsed into a heap of ash. Yet, within the ashes, a peculiar bulge suggested that something still lingered. The realm fell into an eerie silence. Tong Yi did not descend but remained suspended in the air, casting a cold gaze downward. Suddenly, realizing it could not entice Tong Yi to come down, the pile of ashes erupted violently, sending a ghostly light soaring upwards. It moved with astonishing speed, akin to a flash of lightning, and in an instant, it appeared right before Tong Yi, angling itself menacingly toward his brow. Simultaneously, the two immortal islands, which had lain quietly on the dry lakebed like lifeless fish, flickered and transformed into beams of light, darting away in opposite directions to the north and south. In the following moment, with the resounding clash of three distinct sounds, both the ghostly light and the islands were abruptly halted. The ghostly light was delicately pinched between two slender fingers, while the two immortal islands, it was the Hongming's celestial measuring rod, which had been suspended high in the air, that struck down with a forceful blow, sending a shockwave that echoed beneath the Blood Lake, creating two substantial fissures in the ground. The divine powers of the heavens are indomitable, and only swiftness can evade them. Tong Yi chose not to cast a glance at the two celestial islands submerged below the lake. Instead, he spoke softly to the ethereal light hovering just a foot from his brow. He had long been prepared. How could he possibly fall victim to such a ruse? The celestial measuring rod was not merely a decorative artifact, nor had he underestimated his opponent. Moreover, the contingency plans he had devised were far from limited. He had matured into a seasoned celestial being. What on earth is this? As Tong Yi finally discerned the object gripped between his fingers, the aloof demeanor he had maintained moments earlier crumbled, nearly causing him to fling it away in disgust. A finger? Chapter 51. The Origin of the Severed Finger and the Subjugation of Penglai Yizhou. A finger? Tong Yi was taken aback as he clearly identified the object trapped between his two fingers. His face contorted with revulsion as he flicked his right hand, sending the blackened, desiccated severed finger flying. Whoosh! Failing in its ambush and breaking free from its confinement, the dried severed finger attempted to escape once more, transforming into a wisp of ethereal light. Snap! Tong Yi snapped his fingers. In the next moment, a cage of thunder materialized from thin air, imprisoning it within. Why do you always seek to escape? Tong Yi furrowed his brow, scrutinizing the severed finger before him. He had mastered the principles of thunder, capable of directly conjuring a thunder realm. He had refrained from doing so earlier because he was merely a tiny golden immortal, and the thunder realm was too formidable. Furthermore, it served as one of his trump cards. Now that the severed finger had revealed itself, it would not be allowed to flee from his grasp. Let us not forget, within his system space, there remained the formation plate of Fengzhang Island, ready to activate a grand array at any moment. As he focused on the severed finger, the system's attribute panel promptly materialized. Name: Celestial Demon God S. Severed Finger. Details: the malevolent severed finger of the Celestial Demon God, retaining fragmented demonic principles. After absorbing resentment and tainted power, it has given birth to a grotesque nascent will. What? This vast blood lake, this formidable corpse monster, was all formed from a single severed finger? How powerful must the true body of this celestial demon god be? Tong Yi gazed at the severed finger, now ensnared in the thunderous cage, feigning death, filled with confusion. It is crucial to note that although he was merely a tiny golden immortal, his command over the principles of thunder was profound. The corpse monster had withstood his relentless bombardment of thunder. It was indeed extraordinary. And yet, all of this stemmed from just one severed finger? This thought stirred a sense of frustration within Tong Yi. If a mere finger possessed such strength, what must its true form entail? Were it not for the system, he would remain utterly ignorant of what this entity truly was. It seems I must return to Zixiao Palace to diligently seek my master's counsel on the knowledge of demonic paths. The severed finger continues to exert its influence, capable of utilizing the Blood Lake's corpse to refine the Celestial Island. This indicates that the demonic path still persists, not entirely eradicated. Did the old man truly cleanse the demonic path back in the day? Such negligence is inexcusable. Tong Yi suppressed the doubts swirling in his mind, disdainfully stowing the severed finger into the system's space with a wave of his right hand. Suddenly, an extraordinary phenomenon erupted in the heavens above. As countless golden clouds converged from all directions, the entire sky was illuminated in a dazzling golden hue, transforming the world into a resplendent realm of gold. What is this? Tong Yi gazed upwards, a look of bewilderment crossing his face. At this moment, the system thoughtfully presented an attribute panel. Name: Merit golden clouds. Details. When great deeds are accomplished, the heavens resonate. And the Tao will bestow the power of merit as a reward to living beings. Me? Merit? Upon seeing this attribute panel, Tong Yi pointed at himself, his expression a tapestry of questions. What have I done to merit such divine favor from the Tao? Yet, realization struck him swiftly. The severed finger. Almost at the instant it was absorbed into the system space, the merit golden clouds appeared. What does this signify? The system space exists as another realm, with the sole connection to the primordial world being himself. When he stored the severed finger, did the Tao detect his act of obliterating it? Hence, the bestowal of merit? Incredible. The demonic path. What a boon. From now on, I shall eradicate all demons of the primordial realm. Once Tong Yi comprehended this, his heart swelled with joy. He relished the exhilaration of exorcising evil, reminiscent of the old man from Zixia Palace. At that very moment, the merit golden clouds reached their zenith. A radiant sphere of merit power descended from the golden clouds, enveloping and consuming Tong Yi in an instant. How much merit power will I receive? This severed finger. I am enamored. As the merit power cascaded upon him, Tong Yi felt an unparalleled sense of comfort, every cell and inch of his skin rejoicing in ecstasy. Moreover, this merit power seemed to possess sentience. Rather than dispersing chaotically, it flowed in an orderly fashion towards his back. What is happening? Tong Yi closed his eyes, attentively sensing the trajectory of the merit power, not out of curiosity, but rather out of concern that this might overwhelm him. In the next moment, he sensed the entirety of the merit power converging on his back, beginning to coalesce into a small disk. The disk floated behind him, radiating a sanctified golden light, adorned with various obscure and enigmatic symbols and patterns, emanating an aura of merit power that instilled apprehension in those who beheld it. As the merit power continued to be absorbed, the disk grew increasingly larger. As the disk expanded to a size of 100 zhang, the merit power within Tong Yi was nearly depleted, causing the disk to cease its growth. Yet, even at this 100 zhang magnitude, it loomed immensely behind the figure of Tong Yi, accentuating his towering and imposing presence. At that moment, witnessing this spectacle, the two celestial islands, feigning death beneath the desiccated blood lake, could no longer contain themselves. Brother, he has actually slain that fiend. Moreover, he has gained merit power. Shall we still escape? Escape? Nonsense. If you are so obstinate, then flee. This individual commands the path of thunder, effortlessly dispatching that monster. How terrifying. We cannot flee now. What then? Must we truly submit to him? I fear we might end up like our third brother, stripped of our intellect. Alas, do we have any other choice? Let us deactivate the Great Formation. He has gained the heavenly Tao's recognition and should not harm us. Suddenly, the protective barrier of the two celestial islands vanished, and two spiritual entities emerged simultaneously, conversing amongst themselves. Both manifested as male figures, one middle-aged, the other youthful. The middle-aged spirit was more corporeal, while the youth appeared considerably more ethereal, a clear indication of their respective durations of consciousness. As they gazed upon Tong Yi, who was aglow with the merit golden wheel, resembling a deity, Peng Lai and Ying Zhou were filled with trepidation. Nevertheless, they bowed reverently towards the heavens, exclaiming in respect, Peng Lai and Ying Zhou pay homage to the immortal. We are deeply grateful for your life-saving grace. Congratulations on your vanquishing of the fiend and obtaining merit power. In the heavens above, Tong Yi, who had been savoring the effects of the merit golden wheel, was interrupted by the two spiritual entities. With a hum, he retracted the merit golden wheel, waved his right hand, and dismantled the formation he had established. The primordial measuring ruler, which had been suspended in the firmament, returned to his side, transforming into a diminutive inch-sized figure that playfully circled around Tong Yi, emitting a joyful humming sound, as if to say, "Wasn't I splendid just now?" "Indeed," Tong Yi replied, immediately perceiving the ruler's intent. He gently tapped it with his elongated fingers and chuckled, "However, I still require the merit power. You cannot consume it." The primordial measuring ruler emitted a plaintive hum, then obediently shrank and nestled into Tong Yi's ear. At that moment, Tong Yi regarded the two spiritual entities below, just as he had observed moments prior. He cast a dispassionate glance at them and remarked, "Thank you? Is this how you express your gratitude? Immortal, please do not extinguish our intellect. Immortal, we acknowledge our wrongs. Here, we offer you our accumulated spiritual plants and treasures, all dedicated to you." Upon hearing this, the two spiritual entities were utterly struck with fear. Various treasures emanated from their hands, soaring towards Tong Yi. "Esteemed immortal, this is the only innate supreme spiritual root in Sanxian Island, known as Huang Zhong Li, dedicated to you. Esteemed immortal, here is the divine water of the three lights, cultivated over countless years on our island, 1,000 drops, all for you. Moreover, this is Gung Jing, an exceptional material for refining artifacts, which can enhance hardness by several tens of times when infused into treasures. Please do not be displeased, for I also possess top-tier alchemical materials, such as Yusue Ji and Zhugua. These are all for you, as long as you do not extinguish our spiritual intelligence. We two brothers will surely nurture these spiritual plants and ores for your benefit. At that moment, the two spirits of Panlai Ingzhou exerted themselves to present various treasures, transforming into streams of brilliant light that flew before Tong Yi. The assortment was vast, encompassing heavenly materials for refining, alchemy, and body cultivation, untouched by any prior refinement. The quantity was exceedingly abundant. In an instant, the surroundings were aglow with resplendent treasures. Even Tong Yi found himself momentarily dazzled. Among them, a small tree exuding a rich medicinal fragrance captured his utmost attention. It was indeed the Huangzhong Li, specifically offered by Panglai Island. Its appearance was remarkably peculiar, resembling a plum tree, with emerald green leaves adorned with 3 blossoms, 3 young fruits, and 3 ripe plums. The flowers resembled lotus blossoms, while the fruits bore a resemblance to pearl cores. Hidden within the flowers and fruits, the words Huangzhong intermittently shimmered, exuding the aura of the great Tao. Was this truly one of the top 10 innate supreme spiritual roots, Huangzhong Li? With a flick of his right hand, under the influence of spatial laws, the plum tree began to shrink, ultimately resting in his palm, now only the size of a hand. The system's attribute panel appeared in due course. Name, Huangzhong Li. Grade, innate supreme spiritual root. Growth cycle, flowers bloom every cycle, fruits bear every cycle, mature every cycle, and can be consumed after one more cycle. Details, inhaling its fragrance can augment one's Tao cultivation by 10,000 years. Consuming its fruit allows one to resonate with the cosmos and transcend to the great Luo golden immortal. By the heavens, what a splendid treasure. Upon reading the system's introduction, Tong Yi's eyelashes quivered slightly. He maintained an outwardly composed facade, yet internally, he was overwhelmed with joy. In his past life, he had read novels and was aware that there were many innate spiritual roots, but only 10 could be deemed supreme. Examples included the ginseng fruit of Zhenyuan Zi and the Pantao tree. Huangzhong Li was indeed one of them. The mere scent of its flowers could enhance one's Tao cultivation for thousands of years, and consuming its fruit could lead one to immediate transcendence as a great Luo. It was simply more formidable than Zhenyuan Zi's ginseng fruit tree. With this tree, would it not be possible to ceaselessly cultivate great Luo? How infuriating. The growth rate is exceedingly slow. It takes 4 cycles of the month to consume a single fruit. There are 3 blossoms on this tree, 3 tender fruits, and 3 ripe plums. Even at the fastest pace, one must wait an entire cycle to savor 3 plums. Tong Yi, at a loss for words, pondered why they must wait another cycle when they are already ripe. The sight of the plums ignited a yearning within him, compelling him to return and contemplate the celestial transformation jade plate without delay. If he could comprehend the laws of time, he could expedite the ripening of these yellow plums. With this thought, Tong Yi's heart raced with anticipation. He glanced down at the 2 trembling spiritual entities that furtively observed him, acknowledging their cleverness. By presenting such treasures from heaven and earth, they had already demonstrated their worth, claiming they could continue to cultivate more. However, Tong Yi had never intended to extinguish their intelligence. After all, he was not like Pain, who would annihilate the world at a whim. A celestial island imbued with spirit is far more valuable than one devoid of it. Of course, this is contingent upon their obedience. Having presented their treasures, where is your loyalty? Tong Yi spoke softly. Although his voice was gentle, it resonated like thunder in the ears of the 2 spiritual entities. Their eyes sparkled with delight. To be asked for loyalty indicated that their intelligence would not be obliterated. Thank you, Master, for your mercy. The 2 spiritual entities exchanged glances, bowed deeply to Tong Yi, and in an instant transformed into 2 glowing celestial cores. Simultaneously, the voice of Panlai echoed, Master, these are the cores of my 2 brothers. As long as you imprint your essence upon them, we shall be yours. Tong Yi lowered his gaze, and with a flick of his left hand, the 2 celestial cores appeared in his grasp. Name, Panlai Celestial Island Core. Seals, 8972 seals. Status, ownerless. Details, control over seals after refinement. Name, Ingzhou Celestial Island Core. Seals, 7963 seals. Status, ownerless. Details, control over seals after refinement. Oh, the seals of the Panlai Celestial Island surpass even those of the primordial measuring ruler. However, upon observing the yellow plums in his right hand, Tong Yi understood. To nurture such an innate supreme spiritual root, the grade of this celestial island would naturally not be inferior to that of the yellow plums. Nevertheless, with a crackle, Tong Yi's body erupted with arcs of thunder, and he murmured to the 2 celestial cores in his hand, why must we refine the seals as well? Upon hearing this, The two spiritual entities were nearly in tears. Master, these were formed by the heavenly Tao. We are powerless to alter them. Tong Yi smirked, finding amusement in their plight. He then commanded the two spiritual entities to gather the treasures before him. Ultimately, he cast both celestial islands into the system space, including the charred remnants of the Abad Island, which lay blackened by the force of lightning, despite having been ravaged by the Taoist Donghua. However, at the very least, this object possesses the dimensions of a celestial isle, which could potentially be refined into treasures akin to bricks. After completing all of this, Tong Yi hesitated not for a moment. His figure flickered and transformed into a bolt of thunder, vanishing into the void. The eastern sea stretches endlessly, vast and unfathomable. Yet, he could discern clearly that, following the emergence of the Merit Golden Cloud, numerous beings from all directions hastened toward this place. Although the most formidable beings of the primordial heavens were currently engaged as diligent students within the Zixiao Palace, who could ascertain whether the Eastern Sea concealed any primordial titans. During his previous emergence, he had overheard a conversation between Yao Qi and his master, suggesting that the Yuan Feng was not yet deceased and awaited its rebirth. Who could say if the ancestral dragon of the Dragon Clan might share a similar fate? These ancient beings were exceedingly cunning. It was imperative to retreat swiftly. For the benefit of all, hurry, and perhaps he could still catch the teachings. He recalled that Donghua Taoist had been conferred the title of the foremost male immortal immediately following the conclusion of the second sermon. How genuinely happy he was. At the Zixiao Palace's teaching grounds, bolstered by his enhanced strength and undeterred by any obstructive forces along the way, Tong Yi swiftly traversed the 33 heavens and crossed the chaos, returning to the Zixiao Palace. Ah, dear master, your disciple has returned. Upon landing in the square, the triumphant Tong Yi transformed from a monkey into a youthful figure clad in white robes. With joyous strides, he directly approached the grand entrance of the Zixiao Hall. This expedition had yielded not only the six-eared, but also a melding of bloodlines, alongside the acquisition of 2 celestial isles. It was indeed difficult not to feel elated. Buzz, as the door shimmered with flowing light, he had already entered the hall. Instantly, the sacred sounds resonating within the grand hall came to an abrupt halt. The extraordinary phenomena dissipated. Who on earth is it now? Must we be disturbed once more? In that moment, all great beings, their gazes lethal, turned their attention towards the figure that had just crossed the threshold. Chapter 53. Has Donghua Taoist truly befriended a saint's disciple? Swish, swish, swish. Countless glares, filled with resentment, murderous intent, and sharpness, simultaneously pierced toward the entrance of the Zixiao Hall. At this instant, the grievances harbored by the 3,000 Zixiao guests reached their zenith. Having been interrupted once before, they were now disturbed yet again. Was there truly no decorum remaining? Did they not hold the saints in reverence any longer? Damn it, I wish to see who it is and give them a slap once the teachings conclude. The 3,000 great beings silently cursed. Even Donghua Taoist, who typically would not absorb the teachings, bore an expression of murderous intent, not due to the interruption, but rather because he had long desired to unleash his wrath. However, the following moment brought a turn of events. As they discerned the identity of the newcomer, the previously ferocious gazes of the 3,000 great beings simultaneously softened into smiles. There was simply no way around it. For the visitor was none other than the Hunyuan Taoist. How dare they harbor animosity? Some even exhibited facial twitches due to their abrupt change of expression, yet fearing misinterpretation. They forced smiles upon their faces. Within the grand hall, only Hao Yin and Yaxer displayed eyes that sparkled with genuine joy, their smiles radiating sincerity. Senior brother Yu. Yaxer, beaming with delight, immediately covered her mouth mid-sentence. She stuck out her tongue, her heart racing with excitement, reflecting on how she nearly let slip her words about his return. Thankfully, she reacted swiftly. My apologies, everyone. I lost track of time while closing a small portal, resulting in my tardiness. What a predicament. Tong Yi, feeling quite fulfilled this time, radiated happiness as he waved and smiled at the 3,000 formidable beings. Particularly upon seeing Taoist Donghua, Tong Yi adorned his face with the most sincere smile. However, regarding his casual demeanor, the 3,000 great beings were rendered speechless. Hesitant to utter a word, for the saint remained upon the Tao platform. Who among them would dare to act so audaciously before a saint, aside from Tong Yi? They could only squint their eyes, responding to Tong Yi with smiles while inadvertently glancing towards Taoist Donghua. Although the differential treatment from the Hunyuan Taoist was subtle, who were they? Each possessed a discerning gaze. They clearly observed that the Hunyuan Taoist lingered on Donghua for a heartbeat longer. Moreover, that smile was entirely genuine, emanating from the depths of his being. Instantly, the 3,000 great beings were filled with astonishment, reflecting on the fact that Taoist Donghua was indeed not lying. He had truly formed a bond with a disciple of the saint. Was his claim of hosting a banquet for the saint's disciples sincere, rather than mere bravado? Alas, they should not have been so harsh on Donghua earlier. They must resolve the misunderstanding with him once the discourse concludes. At this moment, Taoist Donghua, equally taken aback, revealed a look of surprise. Although he was perplexed as to why the usually aloof Hunyuan Taoist suddenly felt so familiar in that instant. Upon feeling the astonished gazes of the 3,000 great beings, all his previous frustrations and negative emotions were swept away in an instant. He felt invigorated, as if a fresh breeze had enveloped him. His lips could not suppress a smile, and with his back straightened, he reciprocated the smiles of the 3,000 great beings. The reason eluded him. Perhaps the saint's disciples had heard tales of Donghua. The more they observed this, the more resolute the 3,000 great beings became. They even began contemplating what precious gifts to bring to the banquet in order to capture the attention of the saint's disciple. One must admit, where there are people, there exists a realm of intrigue. Yet, the moment Tong Yi entered, amidst laughter and conversation, various thoughts began to intertwine among the 3,000 great beings. Were you listening? If not, then leave. Just then, an indifferent voice emanated from the Tao platform. It was over. The saint was displeased. This is not my concern. A shiver ran through the crowd, each individual suppressing the myriad thoughts racing through their minds, hastily bowing their heads like quails. Listen, listen. Master, do not be angered. Anger hastens the aging process. Tong Yi replied with a cheerful smile, yet he dared not be neglectful. With a gust of wind at his feet, he swiftly settled into a meditative position at one corner of the Tao platform. Hong Jun shot him a displeased glare, then resumed his teachings. The heart conceals the spirit. The acquired is the consciousness, while the innate is the ritual. When one is empty of sorrow, the spirit is stable, and extraordinary phenomena will arise. With auspicious signs and golden lotuses reappearing, the 3,000 mighty beings displayed expressions of joy, closing their eyes as they began to enter the realm of understanding the Tao. Surely, this time, no one would interrupt, right? On the Tao platform, Tong Yi operated the Zishao Heart Sutra, much like during his first lecture, capturing the sacred sound runes and drawing them into his dantian for his primordial spirit to absorb and strengthen. Although his bloodline was imperfect, preventing him from refining the heart fire, he could still enhance his primordial spirit through the absorption of sacred sound runes, thereby increasing his upper limit of magical power. What was this? Refining qi to 90,000 layers? Tong Yi ceased his musings, sinking his consciousness into the system space. He refrained from utilizing the creation jade plate borrowed from Hong Jun, opting instead to employ it within the confines of the system. He understood the principle of a commoner is guilty for possessing a treasure. The 3,000 mighty beings were intertwined with the heavens. If word got out, who could say whether some hidden power would risk everything to seize the creation jade plate? In such a case, while the plate itself would remain secure, his own survival was uncertain. Name, fragment of the creation jade plate. Grade, chaotic supreme treasure, incomplete. Status, possessed item. Details, once a vessel of the great Tao, containing the principles of the 3,000 pathways, capable of imparting insights into said pathways, documenting various knowledge of the primordial heavens, miraculous abilities, historical events, and information on myriad life forms. Due to its incompleteness, all functions are not fully realized. Upon glimpsing the fragment of the creation jade plate in the system space, the attributes panel emerged before Tong Yi. Astonished by the contents, he wondered, a vessel of the great Tao? What does it mean to be a vessel? And what of the current great Tao? Setting aside these thoughts, this item is indeed a chaotic supreme treasure, albeit incomplete. It must be one of the last remaining chaotic supreme treasures in the primordial era. Master truly is generous, lending such a remarkable item so easily. After his astonishment, Tong Yi no longer hesitated and eagerly began to release his divine consciousness, seeking to comprehend the laws within. Without Tong Yi's disturbance, the entire hall enveloped in tranquility, the voice of the sage resonating endlessly. In a blink, half of the lecture had passed. This time, Hong Jun spoke on the transition from Golden Immortal to Supreme Golden Immortal. Each mighty being displayed expressions of profound enlightenment, akin to receiving the nectar of wisdom. Yet Tong Yi remained seated, a displeased look upon his face. What on earth? Is my comprehension truly so lacking? I have already fused 2 bloodlines. Yet, why is it so challenging to comprehend the divine creation jade plate? Does it truly encompass 3,000 laws? My master would not deceive me, would he? Tong Yi felt an overwhelming sense of frustration, constantly mulling over his thoughts. For an entire millennium, he had been immersed in the contemplation of the fragments of the divine creation jade plate. Yet, he could not perceive even the slightest hint of the power of the laws, let alone the temporal laws he yearned to grasp, even the spatial laws. The laws of formations and the laws of thunder that he had already comprehended eluded him entirely. In his moments of leisure, He had shattered the core restrictions of the two immortal islands of Penglai and successfully refined and fully mastered them. Oh, wasn't it said that the power of merit possesses myriad wondrous uses? Could it not be employed to comprehend the laws of the divine creation jade plate? Suddenly, a spark of inspiration ignited within Tong Yi's mind, and his eyes gleamed with excitement. Chapter 54. Feeding the divine creation jade plate with merit. The river of time emerges previously. He had formed 100-foot golden wheel of merit behind him. Before he could explore its potential, he was interrupted by the affairs of Penglai. At this moment, Tong Yi directed his focus towards the wheel behind him. To maintain a low profile, he had concealed the golden wheel of merit, yet he could still sense its sacred and grand aura. What is the power of merit? In the primordial world, it is akin to a universal remedy. Infusing enough merit into a weapon can forge postnatal spiritual treasures or supreme treasures. Incorporating merit into pills can eliminate any side effects upon consumption. Furthermore, the power of merit can be utilized to refine the physical body, strengthen the primordial spirit, and elevate one's cultivation. Most importantly, it can lead to sanctification. When one reaches the pinnacle of quasi-saint and masters a complete law, achieving the Tao fruit. And with the primordial purple energy establishing the foundation of the Tao, one can utilize vast amounts of merit to attain sanctification. Thus, Tong Yi, after a millennium of fruitless endeavor with the divine creation jade plate, sought to test whether the power of merit could assist him in comprehending the temporal laws. After all, for him, the temporal laws were of utmost significance. Soon, under his mental control, a foot of merit was extracted and absorbed into the system space, swiftly merging with the fragment of the divine creation jade plate. At that moment, Tong Yi felt an immense tension. His entire focus centered on the divine creation jade plate. Buzz, the divine creation jade plate, infused with the power of merit, emitted a twinkling glow, and then there was nothing more. The brilliance faded, indistinguishable from the other treasures. What? Is that all? By the heavens! Does it consume merit without yielding laws? Tong Yi cursed internally. This was a full foot of merit. A mere mortal might not achieve sainthood without such merit. The divine creation jade plate had an insatiable appetite. Tong Yi felt a surge of frustration, wishing to strike it down. Yet, he restrained himself. At least the divine creation jade plate had responded with a glimmer of light, indicating that it still held a modicum of effect. Tong Yi gritted his teeth, enduring the pain in his heart, and once again extracted 10 zhang of merit power, infusing it into the creation jade plate. Simultaneously, he incessantly chanted in his mind, "Time law, time law, time law." In the next moment, a tremor coursed through Tong Yi's heart, for he sensed that after absorbing the 10 zhang of merit law, the creation jade plate indeed emitted a faint aura of law. This ethereal essence, formless and colorless, was shrouded in mystery. Even a mere wisp of it possessed power comparable to that of the space law. What is this? The time law? Could it be that within this incomplete creation jade plate, the time law still exists? Tong Yi's heart soared with joy. What did he fear the most? It was the absence of the time law within the creation jade plate. Now that he had found the answer, he finally had a goal. Merit can be earned again. Once the teachings conclude, he would inquire about the origins of the severed finger from his master, and perhaps he could uncover the remnants of the demonic path. At that time, he would acquire merit once more. With this thought, Tong Yi hesitated not for a moment. He began to extract 10 zhang at a time from the merit golden wheel, once more infusing it into the fragment of the creation jade plate. Soon, the merit golden wheel shrank to a mere 9 zhang, while the aura of the time law within the fragment of the creation jade plate grew increasingly dense. However, the issue remained. It was merely dense, still formless and colorless, not yet manifesting. The system could not detect its existence, let alone shatter it. Tong Yi steeled his heart. He poured all of the remaining 9 zhang of merit power into it. Buzz! Suddenly, the fragment of the creation jade plate, having consumed 100 zhang of merit, emitted a resonant hum, sounding joyous and satisfied. In the next moment, it appeared as if the creation jade plate had opened its heart. The elusive aura of the time law fully revealed itself. Name: incomplete time law inheritance. Details: an inheritance left by an unknown existence within the creation jade plate. With a chance to comprehend the time law and glimpse the true essence of the path of time. It has emerged. The system has recognized it. The 100 zhang of merit power was worth it. Tong Yi's heart leaped with joy. Without a second thought, he thrust his fist directly into the system space, aiming at the creation jade plate. At this moment, the fragment of the creation jade plate trembled violently, as if in disbelief. Buzz! It emitted a sharp cry, seemingly pleading for its master's help. It hurriedly attempted to withdraw the time law inheritance and escape. But Tong Yi's fist had already arrived. Crack! A crisp sound rang out from the fragment of the creation jade plate. Ding! successfully shattered the incomplete time law inheritance. Ding. Gained insight into the fundamentals of the time law. As the notifications chimed, Tong Yi had no time to comfort the creation jade plate. A profound and enigmatic force, akin to a gentle stream, emerged from the recesses of his mind. It was a rudimentary yet pivotal insight into the laws of time. Like a diminutive beacon illuminating the path, its faint glow was sufficient to allow him to begin to glimpse a fragment of the temporal laws. Instantly, a myriad of wondrous visions surged within his consciousness. A river, suspended within the primordial world, appeared both distinctly and obscurely, branching into countless tributaries, each flowing towards a singular small world. The droplets within the river seemed to encapsulate moments frozen in time. In that fleeting instant, he perceived the very origins of the primordial realm. A towering figure, grand and majestic, transformed as time flowed, its flesh and blood morphing into immense vitality, giving rise to myriad beings and races. Its eyes and hair became a multitude of stars, suspended within the cosmos, while its corporeal essence merged with the earth, rejuvenating it into flowers, grasses, trees, and creatures of flight and land. Time continued its relentless march, as all existence perpetually cycled through the stages of birth, growth, decay, and rebirth. The profundity of the laws of time surpassed all imagination, revealing itself to be far more intricate than the laws of space. Tong Yi closed his eyes, focusing intently. Before this moment of enlightenment, he had been filled with excitement, brimming with various conjectures regarding the laws of time. Yet, in this instant, his spirit was utterly tranquil, wholly immersed in the novel power and insights of these laws. However, unbeknownst to Tong Yi, the moment he attained this understanding, the external world erupted in chaos. On the Dao platform, mysterious time runes suddenly manifested, shimmering around Tong Yi. The shapes and arrangements of these runes constantly shifted, pulsating with an aura of unfathomable temporal laws. In an instant, at the center of the platform, the venerable Hong Jun, who had been with closed eyes expounding upon the Tao, sensed the disturbance and opened his eyes, furrowing his brow. His discourse had been repeatedly interrupted, and without a moment's hesitation, he knew it was the mischief of his wayward disciple. Before opening his eyes, Hong Jun had already resolved to forge a ruler to discipline this wayward pupil. Yet, upon witnessing the swirling runes encircling Tong Yi, a look of astonishment flickered in his ancient, tranquil gaze. This is not good. Just as Hong Jun intended to wave his hand to evacuate everyone from the hall, he was a moment too late. Suddenly, the very fabric of the purple cloud Dao field seemed to resonate with these runes. 9 chimes echoed from the void, reverberating throughout the entirety of the purple cloud Dao field, resonating incessantly within the great hall. At the moment the first chime sounded, 3,000 formidable beings were jolted upright, their faces filled with terror as they looked around, each exclaiming in disbelief. What is happening? Stand guard. Damn it, who interrupted my lecture? What is this? As they processed the situation, they beheld a vast river composed of countless specks of light materializing from the void. It was so immense that even the 3,000 great beings could perceive but a fragment of it. Yet, a slender tributary cascaded from the void, encircling the figure of Tong Yi upon the Dao platform. What is this? The river of time. He has, in the midst of listening to the Dao, comprehended the laws of time. In this moment, those 3,000 great beings who discerned this extraordinary phenomenon were utterly mesmerized. Chapter 55. The 3,000 great beings, filled with resentment, grasped the art of stillness, coalescing form and dispersing energy. Is this the projection of the river of time? Enlightenment. He has indeed attained insight into the laws of time. But wait, did not the Tao ancestors speak of the path of the 5 energies converging in the Tai Golden Immortal? Indeed, have we overlooked something of great significance? Gratitude to the Hunyuan friend. It is through you that I have caught a glimpse of a corner of the river of time today. The disciples of the saints are indeed as their titles suggest. Within the Zixia Great Hall, the 3,000 great beings gazed in astonishment at the figure enveloped by the currents of the river of time upon the Tao platform. Unable to contain themselves, they erupted in exclamations of awe. At this moment, their eyes reflected a blend of admiration, envy, and jealousy that could not be concealed. Even the 6 seated upon the 6 grand cushions were similarly affected. That is the path of time, the most enigmatic among the 3,000 avenues. One can sense its presence in its passage, yet one cannot grasp it. Even though they each possessed lifespans equal to that of the heavens, they could not halt the inexorable flow of time. Since the dawn of creation, the mighty beings of the primordial heavens have sought to comprehend this path. However, those who have truly grasped and entered its realm are few and far between, let alone those who can master it. Moreover, that is ancient history. In this world today, only one has genuinely comprehended the laws of time, and that is Zhu Jiuyin, one of the 12 ancestral witches. This illustrates just how challenging it is to fathom the laws of time. Yet today, While all were engrossed in the teachings, Tong Yi unexpectedly summoned the ethereal reflection of the river of time, leaving them envious and jealous. Indeed, jealousy turned Jie's face a shade of purple. Alas, if only they knew that their senior brother had also comprehended the laws of space and thunder, would they not have been left aghast? Listening to the clamor of the 3,000 great beings, Yao Qi and Hao Tian exchanged glances, each finding in the other's eyes a glimmer of schadenfreude. Initially, they were naturally astonished by Tong Yi's comprehension of the path of time. However, with frequent astonishment comes a heightened threshold. They had already resolved to follow their senior brother, and any further insights he gained would only be beneficial for them. At this moment, witnessing so many formidable beings humbled by their senior brother's prodigious insight filled Hao Tian and Yao Qi with satisfaction. Fortunately, the anomaly did not last long. The runes surrounding Tong Yi began to accelerate slowly. In an instant, the surrounding symbols began to whirl faster and faster. The onlookers could not discern how many times these runes circled around Tong Yi. Ultimately, they all vanished into the center of his brow. As the runes dissipated, the ethereal river of time swiftly retreated into the void, disappearing without a trace. Some powerful beings even discreetly employed their ocular divine abilities to peer into that emptiness. Yet they could no longer perceive anything. It was as if the river of time had never existed at all. Why does everyone gaze upon me? At that moment, Tong Yi opened his eyes, instantly locking onto countless stares. Joy danced in his gaze, yet with an air of nonchalance, he inquired, "Why do you not continue to listen to the teachings?" Upon hearing this, a chorus of deep breaths resonated throughout the hall. Many powerful beings nearly erupted in curses, suppressing their vexation through breathing techniques to stabilize their composure. Listen to the teachings. What nonsense! You have interrupted us several times this session. How dare you ask why we do not continue to listen? How insufferably pretentious! Do you feign ignorance of what has transpired? Their faces betrayed an expression that implored him to accept their congratulations, simmering with frustration, yet powerless to act. In just a few breaths, many powerful beings silently admonished themselves to remain calm, then altered their expressions to offer hollow smiles. They bowed towards Tong Yi, congratulating him. "Congratulations, Taoist Hunyuan, on your comprehension of the laws of time. Your extraordinary talent truly befits the disciple of a sage. Today, witnessing your epiphany, we realize we are but fools among the 3,000 of us." Among them, Taoist Donghua wore a sincere expression, his voice the loudest. Tong Yi waved his hand dismissively, responding lightly, "Oh, it's nothing much. There is no need for such exaggeration. Let us encourage one another." Yet the mischievous grin on his face was utterly unabashed. Upon hearing this, the hall fell into silence for 3 breaths. Another flurry of hurried breaths echoed as they forced laughter, resuming their flattery. On the dais, observing the expressions of the 3,000 powerful beings, Tong Yi wore a beaming smile, his heart brimming with delight. Achievements mean little if they go unnoticed. He understood that among the 3,000 powerful beings below, some likely harbored jealousy so intense they wished to see him undone. Perhaps even a fleeting thought of seizing his insights crossed a few minds. Yet it was futile. It was unwise to forget who sat behind him. Tong Yi did not wish to draw such attention. He had not anticipated that comprehending the laws of time would result in such an extravagant phenomenon. Yet, now that the spotlight was upon him, he could only revel in it. "Isn't that right, master? Time, dear Taoist," he thought joyfully, turning to smile at Hongjun, extending his pinky finger. However, before he could discern Hongjun's expression, a swift motion occurred. Tong Yi felt a sudden blur before his eyes. Thud! A crisp yet muffled sound reverberated throughout the grand hall. In the next moment, a sharp pain radiated from the crown of his head. "Ouch! Who struck me?" Tong Yi exclaimed, clutching his head in agony while glancing around. To his dismay, a noticeable bump had risen from his skull. Suddenly, a chorus of muffled laughter erupted in the grand hall, as the 3,000 powerful beings wore expressions of utter disbelief, though inwardly they relished the scene. Though they had not witnessed the event, the absence of clarity was sufficient to indicate the identity of the assailant. Clearly, even the saints could not tolerate this individual's arrogance. Silence. At that moment, Hao Tian rose to his feet, his youthful visage contorted with emotion, eyebrows twitching, nostrils flaring, and his lips struggling to suppress a smile. "Continue." The voice of the saint resounded, and the miraculous phenomena of imparting knowledge re-emerged. The 3,000 powerful beings closed their eyes, dismissing the chaos at one corner of the platform caused by the Hunyuan Taoist. Jealousy. It is all jealousy. Tong Yi lamented, his expression pitiful as he sank into contemplation. The previous commotion had been a deliberate display on his part, an intentional interruption of others' enlightenment, which would surely breed resentment. Yet, this ruckus had dissipated much of that animosity. Ignoring the external turmoil, he immersed himself in studying the principles of time. He had received two tidings, one favorable and the other unfavorable. The good news was that he had indeed made his initial foray into the realm of time. The bad news was that it was merely an entry-level understanding, insufficient to exert a significant influence on the system. Now, he could vaguely sense the subtle fluctuations of time around him, yet lacked the ability to wield it effectively. In simple terms, he could perform some of the most fundamental time-related spells, temporarily accelerating or decelerating the flow of time around him. For instance, a stasis spell could halt another's physical form in time, while the technique of gathering form and dispersing energy could hasten his own temporal flow. However, the scope of influence was exceedingly limited, and the duration was fleeting, lasting only a few breaths. Moreover, if there existed a more powerful entity within that range, the effect would be even more ephemeral. The ambition to accelerate an entire day, as he had initially envisioned, was currently unattainable. Perhaps it would require a more profound mastery of the principles, or even enlightenment at a higher level. Alas, it was a start, a seed planted. Understanding the stasis spell was a commendable achievement. Tong Yi reassured himself, although he remained secretly preoccupied with thoughts of locating the remnants of the demonic path. The power of merit could surely elevate his mastery of the principles, and he was eager to inherit the task of vanquishing evil from his master. As the second impartation of knowledge drew to a close, the Zixiao Grand Hall bore witness to the passage of time. 3,000 years had indeed elapsed. On this day, the voice of Hongjun Daozu resonated, causing all anomalies to vanish. The 3,000 mighty beings simultaneously opened their eyes, directing their gaze towards the Dao platform. In the next moment, their faces were illuminated with joy, for this time the saint did not depart immediately. Could it be that an opportunity presented itself? Chapter 56. The conclusion of the second sermon and the bestowal of the titles of supreme deities to men and women. We express our gratitude to the saint for the second sermon. The 3,000 mighty beings rose in unison, clasping their hands in a gesture of respect, bowing deeply towards the Dao platform. Each countenance radiated genuine reverence, while their eyes sparkled with fervent light. During the first sermon, the saint had departed without allowing them a chance to express their thanks. However, this time, the saint remained, signaling the presence of an opportunity. At this moment, on the Dao platform, Tong Yi hastily rose and bowed towards Hongjun Daozu, proclaiming loudly, "Thank you, Master, for the sermon. It has allowed me to comprehend the laws of time." Below, the faces of the 3,000 mighty beings, once filled with hopeful anticipation, suddenly froze, their smiles stiffening, and their lips twitching. "Could you refrain from mentioning your so-called enlightenment?" Hongjun cast a sidelong glance at Tong Yi, a slight tremor coursing through the hand concealed within his sleeve. He restrained the urge to deliver a fierce reprimand to this impudent disciple. He was acutely aware of the teachings he had imparted over the past 3 millennia. Whether one could truly grasp the laws of time remained uncertain to him. Though Hongjun could not see, he could surmise that this wayward disciple must have gained insights into the laws of time from the primal chaos jade plate. Hongjun was astounded by the rapidity of this disciple's comprehension. It was noteworthy that in his own past, he had spent countless epochs deciphering the celestial path and the method of severing the 3 corpses from the primal chaos jade plate. When he had previously lent this artifact to the impudent disciple, he had set a time frame of 1 epoch. He had believed that, regardless of his disciple's exceptional talent, it would take at least 1 epoch to attain any understanding. There was even a possibility that once the epoch concluded, the disciple would be unable to comprehend it, and would return to seek an extension. After all, the primal chaos jade plate was now but a fragment, and its spirit was notoriously temperamental. He could not be certain if the laws of time truly existed within. However, Hongjun never anticipated that this rascal would actually uncover the transmission of the laws of time within the primal chaos jade plate, and do so with such swiftness. Did this not imply that this disciple's comprehension was 1,000-fold greater than that of the Daozu himself? Upon realizing this, even after severing the 3 corpses, Hongjun nearly birthed a malevolent entity anew. Meanwhile, this wayward disciple not only benefited but also feigned modesty, dismissing the laws of time as trivial. This provoked Hongjun to nearly deliver a decisive blow to the disciple's obstinate head. Yet now, he reconsidered, suppressing the impulse to chastise his beloved pupil. Matters of greater importance were at hand. In the bygone era of the Dragon Han calamity, when sentient beings suffered greatly, I have now attained sanctity, and the vitality of the heavens begins to rejuvenate. You should widely disseminate the teachings. From the insights gleaned in the Purple Sky Palace, impart the path to all beings, allowing them the opportunity to ascend to immortality. The resounding voice of the venerable Hongjun echoed throughout the grand hall of the Purple Sky Palace. The 3,000 guests of the Purple Sky nodded in agreement upon hearing this. The intention of the sage, in imparting the teachings to the 3,000, was precisely to guide sentient beings toward the path of immortality. Therefore, when tasked with teaching the masses, they naturally would not resist. As for the method of teaching and to whom it would be given, that was another matter entirely. Yet, in the next moment, Hongjuan's words left the 3,000 powerful beings in stunned silence. The path to immortality for all beings hinges on order above all. Should chaos ensue as a result, it would lead to the inversion of good into evil, yielding counterproductive outcomes. Thus, today I shall appoint 2 individuals as the leaders of the male and female immortals, tasked with overseeing the multitude of immortals. Upon uttering these words, it was as if a thunderclap had struck the ground, igniting a tumult among the 3,000 mighty beings. Even those who had previously exhibited utmost decorum before the sage could no longer contain themselves. The 3,000 beings exchanged glances, exclaiming in astonishment, overseeing the immortals. The sage is bestowing titles. The leaders of the male and female immortals, seemingly a responsibility, in truth wield significant power. Were it not for my self-awareness, I might have even volunteered myself. The 3,000 beings looked at one another, the atmosphere buzzing with excitement. At the moment of Hongjuan's ascension to sanctity, the mighty beings of the primordial heavens understood that during this era, prior to the emergence of any other saints, the entirety of the primordial realm would be dictated by Hongjuan. Now, as the sage intends to appoint 2 individuals, it is assured that they will hold great influence henceforth. Yet, beneath this apparent truth, they were suddenly confronted with this revelation and found themselves at a loss regarding the deeper intricacies of the consequences involved. They hesitated to make a definitive decision on who should assume such a position. Need I even ponder? Forgive my candor, but apart from my friend Hun Yuan, none present have the qualifications to occupy this role. At that moment, a commanding voice pierced through the hall, swiftly silencing the fervent discussions of the 3,000 powerful beings. On the platform, Tong Yi furrowed his brow upon hearing this proclamation. He had long anticipated Hongjuan's intention to fill these 2 positions. However, Tong Yi thought, forgive my free-spirited nature. If I were truly to be given such a role, would I not be overwhelmed with responsibilities? Absolutely not. Who dares to impose this upon me? Among the crowd lurked a villain. How malicious. Tong Yi felt indignant, and, alongside the 3,000 powerful beings, turned to locate the source of the voice. There, standing amongst the crowd in flamboyant attire, was none other than Taoist Donghua. Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback, recalling the 2 immortal islands he had just warmed in his embrace. Alas, it was best not to hold a grudge against him. At that moment, Taoist Donghua, sensing Tong Yi's gaze, felt as though he had struck the chord of the other's heart. He could not help but straighten his posture as the crowd remained oblivious to the unfolding dynamics. He raised his voice an octave higher and exclaimed, ladies and gentlemen, there is no need for titles such as the foremost male or female immortal. Let us appoint 1 individual as the supreme immortal among all. Dao Hunyuan is undoubtedly our exemplar in this regard. Upon uttering these words, the room resonated with an uproar. On the 6 great cushions, the figures of Jane and Juanti nearly slapped themselves in disbelief. What a blunder. We allowed this opportunity for flattery to be snatched away by Taoist Donghua. This clever rogue. Yuan nodded in agreement, but then shook her head. She had no objections to the selection of the foremost male immortal among the disciples of the sages. However, what if she were to take the position of the foremost female immortal? How infuriating that Donghua would propose a supreme immortal. At that moment, the 3,000 powerful beings began to react. Although they inwardly cursed Donghua for his shameless sycophancy, they could not propose another candidate in light of his public declaration. No, they must lend their support. This was an opportunity. What Donghua said was indeed correct. The supreme immortal should possess gravitas, dignity, and fairness, all qualities embodied by Dao Hunyuan. In such a significant role, I would not accept anyone else. But if you were to propose Dao Hunyuan, I would willingly step aside, wholeheartedly convinced. Dao Hunyuan, your esteemed reputation necessitates that you occupy this position. Please, bear the burden for us. Listening from below the platform, the assembly collectively adjusted their rhetoric. All eyes turned towards themselves, and as they spoke these words, Tong Yi was left utterly dumbfounded. What kind of plot is this? Furthermore, are those words truly about me? I had no idea I was so remarkable. No, please, I absolutely do not wish to assume the title of the Supreme Immortal. Just then, a voice of denial rang out from the Grand Hall. I believe he is unfit. Chapter 57, Dong Wang Gong and Shi Wang Mu, where art thou? O Island of Immortals? Below the platform, the 3,000 powerful beings were initially racking their brains, contemplating how to compliment without appearing foolish, aiming to surpass Taoist Donghua's remarks. However, upon hearing such an abrupt dissenting voice, they were momentarily stunned. Each of them sought to trace the voice to counter this opposition. Yet, when the 3,000 powerful beings discerned who had spoken, they were rendered speechless, their intended responses caught in their throats. for it was none other than the venerable Hongjun Daozu who had uttered those words. On the platform, Tong Yi, upon hearing the dissenting voice, was nearly moved to tears. This is wonderful. The one opposing is my master. I am saved. He turned to gaze at Hongjun with unprecedented gratitude, only to be met with a look of disdain. Hongjun Daozu raised an eyebrow and promptly averted his gaze, fearful that if he continued looking at this wayward disciple, his own composure would falter. Even when he lent the treasured artifact to this wayward disciple, he had never regarded himself with such scrutiny. Now, simply for sparing him a modicum of responsibility, he is overwhelmed with gratitude? What a ridiculous creature. As for why Hongjun would not permit Tong Yi to ascend to the pinnacle of the myriad immortals, is it not apparent? This disciple is an anomaly. Hongjun truly fears that he might inadvertently plunge the entire primordial realm into chaos. Indeed, Hongjun suspects that this wayward disciple could even precipitate a cataclysm ahead of schedule. Therefore, while anyone else may be deemed suitable, he is not. Of course, such sentiments would remain unspoken by Hongjun. At this moment, observing the 3,000 great beings gazing at him with expressions of astonishment and confusion, Hongjun softly remarked, his cultivation is insufficient. He must dedicate himself to the path of self-cultivation. Thus, he is excluded. As for the leaders among the immortals, you shall cast your votes. Once these words escaped his lips, the initially bewildered great beings began to ponder deeply. If even the disciples of sages cannot occupy this position, could it be that there is some ulterior motive? However, as soon as this thought arose, it was swiftly extinguished. Before the sages, they dared not entertain such notions, lest they be seen through. So, who shall take the seat? The three clear ones exchanged glances, their initial intent to recommend Laozi, Yuan Shi, and Tong Tian dissipating into silence. Jane and Juanti also blinked, hesitant to speak. The remaining great beings merely exchanged glances, the once coveted position now resembling a hot potato. I believe it would be best to appoint Donghua Daoren and Shihua Xianzi to these two positions, a voice echoed from within the hall. Upon hearing this, the eyes of the 3,000 great beings lit up in unison. Indeed, if the position is akin to a hot potato, fraught with uncertainty, why not extend a favor and bestow it upon Donghua Daoren? This Donghua Daoren, having forged connections with the disciples of sages, would not be a disservice to oneself. With this thought in mind, the many great beings, without a hint of hesitation, voiced their agreement. I find it feasible. Indeed, Donghua Daoren embodies the essence of primordial yang, while Shihua Xianzi represents primordial yin. The balance of yin and yang aligns with the heavenly principles. Aside from Hunyuan Daoren, Donghua Daoren enjoys a stellar reputation. Known for his generosity, I hold him in high esteem. Both Donghua Daoren and Shihua Xianzi possess commendable virtues. I have no objections. In an instant, the tone among the great beings shifted. Donghua Daoren, who had been lost in contemplation, was suddenly inundated by accolades from all directions. Can I truly be worthy? Donghua Daoren stood stupefied, though his astonishment was unmistakably overshadowed by delight, as he felt himself adrift amidst the tide of praise. Beside him, the enchanting fairy of Shihua hesitated for a moment, but soon the flattery surrounding her clouded her mind. Her cheeks flushed crimson as she gazed at the Taoist of Donghua, her beautiful eyes sparkling with pride and admiration. Initially, the fairy of Shihua had intended to discuss the matters of his concealed immortal island with her husband after the sermon. However, she never anticipated that she would bask in the radiance of his recognition among esteemed beings. For the first time, she perceived the Taoist of Donghua as truly magnificent. On the Tao platform, witnessing the unfolding drama, Tong Yi was left utterly astounded. Although the original plot followed this trajectory, it seemed that just when the storyline was veering off course, it miraculously returned to its rightful path. Was it true what the heavenly Tao had proclaimed, that the grand trend is irreversible, yet minor changes are permissible? Indeed, everything appeared to be progressing smoothly in an unseen manner. At that moment, the Tao ancestor spoke. I hereby confer upon the Taoist of Donghua the title of Dongwang Gong, the foremost among male immortals. I confer upon the fairy of Shihua the title of Shi Wang Mu, the foremost among female immortals. Hongjun was as decisive as ever, delivering his decree with resolute clarity. After uttering these words, a flash of purple light enveloped him, and he vanished from sight. We shall dutifully adhere to the sage's mandate. We bid farewell to the sage. Below the Tao platform, the 3,000 mighty beings bowed in unison, expressing their reverence. The next sermon would not convene for another 3,000 years. All were instructed to leave the grand hall. At this juncture, Hao Hian Yaodi rose, addressing the assembly of 3,000 mighty beings. Meanwhile, the newly titled Dongwang Gong was overwhelmed with elation, too consumed by joy to heed Hao Hian Yaodi's dismissive remarks. He was acutely aware that his elevation to the Tao Ancestor's decree was solely due to the sage's disciple casting a few extra glances his way upon entering the Grand Hall, leading the 3,000 mighty beings to mistakenly assume he had forged a connection with the sage's disciple, thus showering him with praise. Yet, only Dong Wang Gong understood the truth. There had been no such connection. He had not even had an opportunity to converse with the sage's disciple. Thus, in the instant Hong Jun Tao Ancestor vanished, Dong Wang Gong flashed to the foot of the Tao platform. Were it not for the sanctity and extraordinary status of the Tao platform as the sage's seat, he would have boldly ascended it. Upon his arrival, he promptly bowed to Tong Yi, saying, "I have met with you, Hunyuan Taoist. From now on, I shall report all matters regarding the responsibilities of the Hong Huang Immortal Tao to you." Tong Yi had initially intended to accompany Hong Jun out of the Grand Hall to inquire about the sinister calamity of the demon god and the mysteries surrounding the creation jade plate. However, he was intercepted by Dong Wang Gong, who uttered those words. Tong Yi felt utterly exasperated. Who in their right mind would wish to manage so many affairs? Moreover, his master had expressly commanded him not to intervene. Yet here was Dong Wang Gong contriving such a scheme. Nevertheless, as he pondered this, Dong Wang Gong at the foot of the Tao platform felt that he had unraveled the entire situation. Indeed, it was precisely as he surmised. The Tao Ancestor was reluctant to allow his direct disciples to wield power for fear of appearing unjust. Thus, he had entrusted governance to him and the fairy of Xihua. However, in truth, everything must ultimately revolve around the esteemed Taoist of the primordial unity. Contemplating this, the Eastern King felt an unprecedented clarity of mind and lucidity of thought. Before Tong Yi could decline, he, carrying the weight of 3,000 powerful beings, cast a knowing glance at Tong Yi and declared, "I comprehend everything." His purpose for this visit was to extend an invitation to the Taoist to join him on his celestial island for a banquet following the conclusion of the third sermon. All 3,000 Taoists present would gather to deliberate on the future trajectory of the primordial chaos. What do you understand? Tong Yi thought, utterly perplexed. Why was this person suddenly wearing such a lewd smile? I haven't uttered a word. What could he possibly know? Yet, upon hearing the last two sentences, Tong Yi couldn't help but touch the two celestial islands concealed within his sleeve, blinking as he replied, "Very well. Where is your celestial island? I shall attend." Upon hearing Tong Yi's immediate agreement to participate in the banquet, the Eastern King was overjoyed, but in the next moment, he was struck dumb. A thought suddenly dawned upon him. Where is my celestial island? Good heavens! My celestial island. It has been breached. Chapter 58, Return of the Creation Jade Dish. I slipped up. Taoist friend, I just remembered that I left the fire in my alchemical furnace burning. Regarding the banquet, allow me to personally escort you there, if you will. At this moment, the Eastern King, now realizing the gravity of the situation, was thrown into disarray. The initial joy of being conferred the title of Eastern King had evaporated. He merely wished to return to the Eastern Sea and ascertain the condition of his celestial island. Curse it! I have just been granted the title of Eastern King. I cannot expose the matter of blood refinement. Is it truly that serious? Do you require assistance? A look of surprise and concern crossed Tong Yi's face, as if he were genuinely worried about a potential fire in the Eastern King's cave. Thank you for your concern, but such trivial matters do not warrant troubling you, dear Taoist. With that, I shall take my leave. The Eastern King, now in a state of frantic urgency, felt an overwhelming anxiety. Had Tong Yi been so amiable after the first sermon, he would have certainly extended an invitation. Yet now, he simply yearned to hasten back to the Eastern Sea. As for bringing Tong Yi along, that was utterly out of the question. The saint was once the leader of the Demon Extermination Alliance. If his secrets were to be uncovered by this disciple of a saint, he would be finished. Having said this, the Eastern King did not linger any longer, turning to grasp the hand of the Western Queen Mother and soaring towards the exit. The 3,000 powerful beings witnessing this were taken aback, their expressions revealing their astonishment. They had not anticipated the Eastern King to be so eager to depart. Disregarding even the esteemed Taoist of the primordial unity, could it be that he was concocting some extraordinary elixir in his cave? Yet, upon observing the Eastern King's departure, their eyes gleamed with excitement. This was an opportunity for alliances. The Taoists of primordial unity and the guiding figures were about to approach, only to find their vision blurred momentarily. On the platform, shadows of figures vanished, and the smile that had just graced the face of the guiding deity abruptly froze. They exchanged glances, each perceiving the sorrow reflected in the other's eyes. The two from the west were baffled. Why did the Taoist of Hunyuan exhibit such warmth and gentleness towards the Eastern King, yet treat them with such disdain? Cursed be it. Surely, someone must be whispering ill of them before the Taoist, tarnishing their reputation. Could it be the Eastern King? At the rear of the Grand Hall lay the same garden as before. When did a pond appear here? A flash of lightning illuminated the scene as Tong Yi manifested, gazing at Hong Jun who was fishing, and he could not help but murmur softly. Yet, upon reflection, it was Hong Jun who had cultivated the entire Taoist temple. To casually enlarge or shrink the garden and add a pond was but a mere flick of the wrist. Tong Yi dismissed his musings and approached Hong Jun, intending to inquire about the severed finger. Hand it over. However, before he could utter a word, Hong Jun, without lifting his gaze, had already extended his hand. Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback, his eyes widening in disbelief. How could you, master, be watching me? I hadn't even asked about the severed finger, and you revealed it first. Hong Jun's deep, inscrutable eyes remained fixated on the fishing rod in his hands as he replied coolly, What nonsense is this? Why would I monitor you? I demand the creation jade disc. Hand it over. At this, Tong Yi was momentarily stunned, a look of eagerness appearing on his face. What are you doing, master? We've only just begun the Yuan meeting. Although he had received the inheritance of the Tao of Time from the creation jade disc, nay, it should be said he had seized the entire inheritance. The system had shattered, and his reputation was well established. The creation jade disc surely contained no other temporal laws. Yet who would ever complain of having too few? He had been hoping to delve deeper into other laws of inheritance. How could he bear to return it to his master now? Yet, in response to Tong Yi's playful demeanor, Hong Jun's hand remained steadfast in the air, his tone devoid of emotion as he reiterated, Hand it over. At this moment, Hong Jun genuinely worried whether the creation jade disc was secure. Sighing, Tong Yi relented. Fine. Fine. He flipped his right hand, casting the withered, darkened severed finger into Hong Jun's palm. What is this? Hong Jun instinctively grasped it, only to find its texture utterly unfamiliar. At that instant, the severed finger suddenly sensed a breath of freedom, erupting with a ghostly light and swiftly escaping Hong Jun's grasp. However, to Tong Yi's astonishment, no matter how far the ethereal light fled, it returned to Hong Jun's hand in the next moment. What is this? A spatial law? No, there was no trace of spatial law whatsoever. Tong Yi was startled, suddenly recalling that this scene bore a resemblance to the five-finger mountain he had seen in his past life. The evil of the celestial demons was being vanquished. At this moment, Hong Jun was also distracted, disdainfully tossing the severed finger back into Tong Yi's embrace. He then wiped his hand on Tong Yi's pristine robe before remarking, You truly are an extraordinary creature. Even a demon's severed finger can find its way to you. Pray tell, what has transpired in the lower realms this time? Tong Yi, scolded yet smiling, recounted the events of his descent. Upon hearing that Tong Yi had reclaimed the six-eared bloodline, Hong Jun displayed no reaction, as it was expected. However, when he learned of Tong Yi's encounter with the three immortals of Penglai in the Eastern Sea, and how Dong Wang Gong utilized blood-refining techniques to subdue the island, Hong Jun nodded in acknowledgement. Yet, when he heard that Tong Yi had acquired 100-foot merit and had fed it to the creation jade plate, Hong Jun's fishing rod quivered slightly in his grasp. At that moment, he truly wished to turn and berate his disciple for squandering such resources. The creation jade plate contained the legacy of the laws of time. It should have been contemplated at leisure. Was it too much to ask for restraint? The audacity defeated merit. He was puzzled as to why the creation jade plate had suddenly become so amiable. It turned out to be due to that merit. Such power, meant for sanctification, was irresistible to anyone. Yet, considering the bizarre circumstances under which this boy obtained such merit, he decided against further discussion. This lad was simply too enigmatic. Even a stroll could deprive others of their fortune. Fortunately, he had emerged early and had become the boy's master. Thus, the disciple sought to request his master to descend together and eradicate the demonic path, restoring clarity to the chaotic heavens. Tong Yi raised his hand towards Hong Jun's back. Speaking with righteous fervor, Hong Jun weighed the fishing rod in his hand, pondering its suitability for disciplining wayward disciples. Such righteous words. He was not oblivious to this monkey's intentions. Did he think he could simply coax him into action while he collected merit on the side? Dream on. As a sage, he had far more pressing matters to attend to. Hong Jun replied languidly, Since you have inherited my teachings, the responsibility of vanquishing demons should rightly fall upon you. Tong Yi's lips twitched as he prepared to speak again, but Hong Jun cut him off, directly stating, The demon god you seek to eliminate is an erstwhile deputy of the demon sect. His strength is mediocre, and his current status is unknown. The rest you must investigate for yourself. Tong Yi was left speechless. You old man, do you even hear what you are saying? It's as if you have said nothing at all. It was evident that this elder was even lazier than himself, unwilling to concern himself with the remnants of the demon sect. He seemed disinterested even in Dong Wang Gong's blood-refining methods. There was still one crucial matter. Disciple wishes to inquire, Does Master possess any techniques for achieving sanctification in corporeal form? Tong Yi asked. As soon as the words left his mouth, Hong Jun furrowed his brow and finally turned his gaze, his eyes, profound as chaos, fixed upon Tong Yi. How do you know that? apart from severing the three corpses. The physical body can also attain sanctity? A jolt coursed through Tong Yi's heart. Indeed, the method to achieve sanctity was a topic reserved for the third lecture, and his master had yet to impart it. Alas, he had let it slip. Chapter 59, The Essence of the 9 Transformations of Mysterious Arts. Was devoid of fish in this pond, was it not? Meeting Hongjuan's gaze, Tong Yi felt a pang within. Oh dear, he inadvertently revealed too much. The path to sanctity would only be disclosed during the third sermon, and he had inadvertently spoiled the surprise. What constitutes the physical body attaining sanctity? It is not akin to the later figures like Yang Jian, Neza, or Sun Wukong, who merely reached the threshold of sanctity. In their era, the saints had already withdrawn, and the quasi-saint was the pinnacle, hence the omission of the term quasi, directly referring to it as the physical body attaining sanctity. In truth, only one being succeeded in this endeavor. The primordial Pangu, who split heaven and earth. He validated the Tao through sheer strength, single-handedly vanquishing the 3,000 chaotic demons, relying solely on the sanctity of his physical form. Yet the crux of the matter lies herein. These are celestial secrets. At present, Tong Yi was merely a Tai golden immortal and should not possess such knowledge. Would he dare to claim that he was a transmigrant? One who had perused the original text? Who would believe such a tale? His master would undoubtedly impose severe penalties upon him. In that instant, Tong Yi's mind raced. Pangu. At this critical juncture, a flash of inspiration struck Tong Yi. His troubled mind finally conceived a plausible explanation. When the disciple comprehended the laws of time, he glimpsed the origins of all things. Tong Yi began with the metaphor of the river of time as a foundation. After all, it was true. He had indeed witnessed that towering figure. Then, with a tone of uncertainty, he inquired of Hongjun, isn't it true that Pangu, who opened the heavens and earth, validated the Tao through strength, thereby achieving the sanctity of his physical form? Upon hearing this, Hongjun gazed intently at Tong Yi for 3 breaths, reminiscent of their first encounter. After 3 breaths, Hongjun averted his gaze and nodded slightly, replying, indeed, he validated the Tao through strength and attained sanctity of the physical form. Having uttered this, he turned back to focus on the fishing rod and spoke slowly. What? Have you encountered a setback and considered abandoning the path of severing the 3 corpses to attain sanctity? Tong Yi exhaled a sigh of relief. Regardless of whether his master truly believed him, he certainly could not disclose the truth of his transmigration. Moreover, there seemed to be a hint of melancholy in his master's words. Reflecting on this, Tong Yi clenched his right hand into a fist and promptly replied, no, the disciple is resolute. I have yet to locate the other 2 bloodlines, and without them, I cannot forge the heart fire. This is indeed a predicament. Regardless, I am merely biding my time, contemplating an alternate path. The red-haired horse monkey and the spiritual stone monkey have yet to make their appearance. In the realm of spiritual cultivation, one finds themselves stymied in the late stages of the Tai golden immortal due to a deficiency in their bloodline. Naturally, they are reluctant to squander time and thus resolve to cultivate a physical body instead. If one is to embark on this endeavor, it is imperative to seek the finest techniques. Otherwise, what would be the point? Aspirations must be held, for who knows? One might inadvertently ascend to sanctity through their corporeal form. Upon hearing this, Hongjun nodded in satisfaction, albeit with a hint of skepticism, remarking, you, my audacious monkey, are quite greedy, desiring everything. Is there not enough for my esteemed master? Tong Yi widened his eyes, exclaiming in exaggerated disbelief, no way. The illustrious first sage of the primordial world cannot possibly lack the techniques for attaining a sanctified body. What level of enlightenment does Hongjun possess? How could he be swayed by Tong Yi's words? With a demeanor that suggested he found the inquiry amusing, he answered coolly, the technique for achieving a quasi-saintly body is something I could easily create. However, the method for attaining a fully sanctified body is beyond your reach. At these words, Tong Yi's heart jolted. Wait, what? You can create it with ease? Is this not a boast? Are all sages so formidable, or is it merely my master's exceptional prowess? Yet, upon hearing the latter part of Hongjuan's statement, Tong Yi felt a twinge of resentment. Why did this old man look down upon him? Master, please enlighten me. I simply wish to know the answer, he insisted defiantly. As long as it exists, I shall find a way to obtain it. Hongjun, no longer indulging in cryptic responses, revealed, to the east of Mount Buzhou lies the ancestral land of the witch clan, the Panga Hall. The Panga Hall? Tong Yi's eyes sparkled with excitement. The mere mention of this name exuded an air of grandeur. This grand hall, formed from the cranium of Pangu, houses the body-refining technique known as the 9 Transformations Profound Art. Hongjun continued, should you manage to acquire it, through the power of your vitality and blood, you could shatter the confines of the rules and attain sanctity in your physical form. However, this grand hall is both the ancestral land of the witch clan and a forbidden zone, outsiders are not permitted to tread there. Hence, as I stated, it is beyond your grasp. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi furrowed his brow. He recalled the technique practiced by Yang Jian, known as the 8-9 Profound Art. Could it possibly be related to this 9 transformations profound art? The mention of the witch clan conjured the image of a graceful figure in his mind, Hutu. As one of the 12 ancestor witches, she embodies benevolence and is the only ancestor he knows. Perhaps she could be the key to his quest. Thank you, Master, for your guidance. I shall venture to the witch clan shortly. If I cannot succeed, I will return to seek your aid in crafting a technique. Tong Yi set a modest goal for himself. Fearing that Hong Jun might discourage him, he quickly shifted the conversation. Master, there is another matter I wish to discuss. Speak. Hong Jun replied, still not turning to face him. In truth, Hong Jun held little expectation for Tong Yi's success in acquiring the 9 transformations profound art, as he was acutely aware of the notoriously irritable temperaments of the ancestor witches. In his own past, before achieving sanctity, he had also sought the opportunity within the witch clan, yearning to glean insights from the Pango Hall, for it was not merely a repository of techniques. Other opportunities are not fewer than the fragments of the jade disk of creation. And yet, what was the outcome? He was met with outright rejection from the ancestral shaman. That group of shamans, save for Hutu's sweet words, possessed temperaments that were utterly foul. They regarded the Pango Hall as the most sacred of sanctuaries, forbidding any foreigner from entering. Moreover, gaining entry is one matter. Obtaining a fortuitous opportunity is quite another. For his own disciple to wish to enter and acquire the 9 revolutions mystical art? Such a dream. Of course, Hong Jun did not dare to voice this directly. After all, this disciple was exceedingly peculiar. Without the approval of his master, the disciple had taken in the 6-eared macaque as a pupil. Tong Yi tentatively probed, Master, you won't be angry, will you? Hong Jun was momentarily taken aback, initially thinking there was something that might disturb his tranquility. This matter? A triviality. He soon broke into a rare smile. Since you have already accepted a disciple, why inquire further? Everything has its cause and effect. Though the 6-eared macaque is not exceptionally gifted, he possesses considerable wisdom. If you can teach him well, it will indeed be a fortuitous bond. As your master, I would not be angered by such minor issues. Tong Yi felt a surge of joy and quickly expressed his gratitude. Thank you, Master, for your magnanimity. I will devote myself entirely to nurturing Lu Er, the 3rd-generation disciple of Zixiao, into a capable individual. This time, when I descend to the mortal realm, I will bring him back. Hong Jun inwardly lamented. As long as this troublesome disciple does not create more chaos for me, what sort of disciple can he possibly cultivate? Surely, I shall have to teach him myself. Sigh, it's exhausting. Now there's another monkey to contend with. Just as this thought crossed his mind, he heard the mischievous macaque say, Master, there is actually one last thing I wish to ask. Hong Jun was at a loss for words. Did this monkey have 100,000 questions swirling in his mind? Yet, as a master, if a disciple is perplexed and the teacher does not enlighten, then one would not fulfill the role of a mentor. Hong Jun could not tarnish his own reputation as the Dao ancestor. He gestured for Tong Yi to continue. The disciple began to speak, but had already transformed into a bolt of lightning and fled. Hong Jun frowned. What was that about? At that moment, Tong Yi's second half of the sentence reached him. Is it true that there are no fish in this pond? I simply cannot believe that with your skills, Master, you would fail to catch any. Crack. The Zizhu fishing rod smashed onto the ground. Hong Jun finally stood up. Even with the presence of the heavenly Tao's will, his usually unperturbed face now bore an unmistakable expression of anger. Troublesome disciple. How did I come to accept you as my disciple? Chapter 60. Eavesdropping on the hearts of 2 immortal youths, the treasure of the 9th heaven emerges. How did I come to accept you as my troublesome disciple? In the square of Zixiao Palace, the 3,000 mighty beings had long since departed. Only Hao Yan and the Yaoqi remained. At this moment, upon hearing the sounds emanating from the back of the hall, they were momentarily taken aback. My senior brother is truly formidable. He can even provoke the Lord's anger, Hao Yan remarked in admiration. Yaoqi nodded slightly, her face filled with admiration. Since the master vanquished the malevolent corpse, she had never witnessed him display any emotions. It was indeed her senior brother who could stir the master's heart. Just then, a flash of golden lightning appeared, revealing Tong Yi fleeing from the rear of the grand hall. Upon spotting the 2 lively treasures below, Tong Yi hurriedly halted in midair. What are you doing here? He asked, fixing his disheveled hair and feigning calmness. Senior brother, we anticipated you would descend, so we awaited your arrival, Hao Yan replied earnestly, exhibiting endearing obedience. The Yaoqi celestial maiden gazed at Tong Yi with twinkling eyes, first pointing towards the rear of the hall, and then discreetly giving a thumbs up. Tong Yi blinked in response, a slight smile gracing his lips. Everything was understood without words. All right, let us go. With you 2 esteemed beings by my side, I shall not be bullied this time. Tong Yi sighed, feigning a pitiful demeanor. Upon hearing this, Hao Ian furrowed his brow, his eyes wide with indignation. Who dares to bully my senior brother? Such audacity. Let us teach them a lesson. Yet Yaoqi rolled her phoenix-like eyes, clearly skeptical of her senior brother's words. He must be joking. When he was a Shinxian, he boldly snatched treasures from the hands of Emperor Jun and Kuanping and succeeded. During his last descent, he even advanced to the Tai Golden Immortal. Who could possibly bully him? Only Hao Ian, in his naivety, believed it. Tong Yi's ears perked up as he cast a resentful glance at Yaoqi. Ah, this little girl is secretly mocking me. Yet Hao Ian was sincere, expressing exactly what he felt. Indeed, Tong Yi's act of feigned grievance was entirely to gauge the sentiments of the two celestial children. It was not a matter of scheming or distrust, but rather an exercise in utmost caution. After all, Hao Ian and Yaoqi had accompanied Hong Jun for countless years. And with his arrival, he had suddenly become the direct disciple, drawing closer to Hong Jun than they were. Should there be even a hint of discontent in their hearts, jealousy could easily take root, as many calamities stem from envy. Having now become the foremost disciple of Zixiao Palace and forged a close bond with the two lively treasures, he would undoubtedly invest in their growth. However, this was predicated upon mutual trust. Upon hearing their thoughts align with their outward expressions, Tong Yi naturally felt reassured. As for the likes of Jiejing and Juanti, those two rascals, were they truly plotting to snatch his disciples? Them? Impossible. They were clearly very respectful to my senior brother in the Grand Hall. My senior brother wouldn't deceive me, would he? Sigh. I care for you too much to deceive you. Hao Ian, I previously concealed my identity during my descent and used my true form. Now I understand. Do not be angry. Senior brother, when I see them next, I shall surely avenge you. Thus, Tong Yi playfully bantered with Hao Ian, each taking turns in their light-hearted exchange. Soaring forth from the Purple Cloud's palace, we journey towards the celestial realm. The stairway to the 33 heavens sees Tong Yi traversing its lengths multiple times. At this moment, he leads the way, followed closely by the already adorned Yaoqi in her resplendent rainbow attire, and the ever-diligent Hao Tian, still clad in his Taoist robes. It is worth mentioning that although both Hao Tian and Yaoqi have attained the status of great Luo Golden Immortals, they cannot match Tong Yi's speed. Even Yaoqi, dressed in her vibrant rainbow skirt, lags behind him considerably. The trio transforms into streaks of light, swiftly navigating the stairway, descending through the layers, the 30th heaven, the 20th heaven, the 10th heaven. Suddenly, Tong Yi's ears perk up, and he abruptly halts at the 9th heaven. In a flash, Yaoqi and Hao Tian come to an immediate stop as well. What is it, senior brother? Hao Tian inquires, his face a mask of confusion. Yet, Yaoqi's eyes gleam with excitement as she gazes at Tong Yi. Could it be? Tong Yi's eyes shimmer with a violet hue as he gazes westward towards the 9th heaven. After a brief pause, he withdraws his gaze and turns to Yaoqi, revealing a smile. Indeed. Hao Tian, bewildered, exclaims, "What are you talking about? Fool, a treasure is manifesting," Yaoqi exclaims, her enthusiasm palpable as she turns to Tong Yi and asks, "Our fortune is remarkable. Every descent to the mortal realm seems to coincide with the emergence of treasures." Tong Yi explains, "Since our master attained sainthood, the heavenly Tao has bestowed blessings, restoring the spiritual veins of the heavens to their zenith. With the abundance of spiritual energy in the world, many treasures are destined to surface." Upon concluding his explanation, he does not linger, transforming into a bolt of lightning. Racing towards the west, Yaoqi and Hao Tian follow closely behind, both brimming with excitement, especially Hao Tian, who rarely descends to the mortal realm and finds himself amidst such wonders. However, a question lingers in his mind. How did his senior brother know of the treasure's emergence? Furthermore, the scriptures in the Sutra Pavilion mentioned that the manifestation of treasures is always accompanied by omens, yet they had seen no such signs. Before long, the three become streaks of light, halting above a peculiar mountain. This mountain boasts 7 peaks, each rising higher than the last. In that moment, Hao Tian finally comprehends why no signs were visible. It was not that there were none, but rather that they were concealed by an array of formations. Atop the highest peak, a grand formation pulsates with radiance, shrouding the heavenly mysteries. Hao Tian discerns that this formation is not of innate origin, and it shifts continuously, with each transformation differing from the last. This indicates the presence of multiple formations, each taking turns in alternation. In an instant, confusion envelopes Hao Tian. What is happening? Why are these formations continuously cycling? Yaoqi, observing the formation ahead with a serious expression, understands that Hao Tian's experiences in the primordial realm are limited. Thus, she elucidates for him. This signifies the presence of multiple powerful beings within. They have reached an agreement regarding the ownership of the treasure. Thus, they set up a formation to obscure the phenomenon. Concerned about potential interference, They altered the positions within the great array. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi cast a surprised glance at Yao Qi. The young lady had previously demonstrated her extensive knowledge when she brought him to the lower realm, exhibiting an encyclopedic understanding of various matters. Now, she accurately articulated the situation within the array once again. It was evident that in the future, this young girl would surpass even the Heavenly Emperor. Indeed, the circumstances within the Great Formation closely mirrored Yao Qi's description. However, all of this was discerned through his sixth ear divine sense, while Yao Qi merely glanced and deduced the outcome. Her intellect was remarkably sharp. What? The treasure has already been allocated among them? Upon hearing this, Hao Tian could not hide his disappointment. Does that mean we have no chance? He had hoped to witness the emergence of the treasure for the first time. Tong Yi sighed. Could Hao Tian truly become the Heavenly Emperor? His naivety was rather disconcerting. Little Hao Tian, treasures are claimed by the capable. Tong Yi reassured him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Since we have witnessed this, we naturally share in the opportunity. As for those formations, are they truly significant? With that, he vanished in an instant, landing outside the protective barrier of the Great Array. Within the Great Array, 15 figures formed a circle, with a few standing together, exchanging glances filled with solemnity and reluctance. Among them were the three pure ones, Fuxi, Nuo, the two sages of the West, Xinyuanzi, Hongyun, Emperor Jun, Tai, Changxi, Xia, the ancestor of the Underworld River, and the Lamplighter. A total of 15 formidable beings, all esteemed listeners from the Purple Cloud Palace. This treasure, soon to be unveiled, was the very one they had discovered together upon their return to the primordial chaos after hearing the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace. They immediately conferred and set up the Great Formation to prevent other powerful beings from detecting the treasure's manifestation. In the center of these 15, a brown vine twisted and turned, climbing to the peak of the mountain, continuously growing and extending. Strangely, this seemingly unremarkable vine bore 7 gourds, each displaying the colors of purple red, purple gold, purple yellow, purple green, purple cyan, purple black, and purple white. Each gourd radiated brilliance, containing treasures of light that grew ever brighter. Clearly, these 7 gourds were the treasures about to emerge, which accounted for the complex expressions among the assembled powers. In reality, when Tong Yi appeared alongside Yao Qi and Hao Tian, all the powerful beings within the Great Formation had already taken notice. Though they had warmly welcomed Tong Yi in the Purple Cloud Palace, referring to him as Taoist comrade of primordial unity and disciple of the sage, at this moment, none dared to propose opening the formation to invite Tong Yi inside. The reason was quite simple. There were too many monks and too little meat. 7 gourds. Yet there are 15 individuals. It is evident that there are insufficient resources to share among them. Each harbors distinct ambitions, believing in their own capabilities. And upon revealing their true intentions, they vie for a single gourd. However, should Tong Yi and Hao Tian join the fray for this soon-to-be unveiled treasure, how shall it be apportioned? Would it not necessitate the preordained allocation of more than 1 gourd to Tong Yi? After all, he is a disciple of a sage. They still yearn to attend the 3rd lecture. Yet mingling and seizing opportunities are 2 separate matters that should not be conflated. With 7 treasures and 16 aspirants, the odds of success are already diminished. No one is inclined to further reduce their chances of obtaining a treasure. Thus, even as they observe Tong Yi approaching the Grand Formation step by step, not a single formidable being among them dares to speak up. Hongyun contemplates breaking the silence. But before he can act, the ever-cautious Zhen Yuanzi swiftly covers his mouth and shakes his head. The formation lies in silence, as each powerful entity is eager to witness Tong Yi's next move. A rare consensus prevails among them. They firmly believe that as long as they do not activate the Grand Formation, Tong Yi cannot contend with them from the outside. Once the treasure manifests, they shall seize it and depart. When the dust settles and fortunes are distributed, should Tong Yi be absent, there shall be no grievances against the sage's disciple. Indeed, this is the collective mindset of each individual present. As for whether Tong Yi can breach 15 Grand Formations and then compete with them for the treasure, such a notion is utterly absurd, a fanciful dream with no possibility of realization. Name: 7 stars holding the Moon Formation. Realm: Postnatal Grand Formation. Master: Nuwa. Details: utilizes the Big Dipper as the formation's focal point, corresponding to the celestial forces, and is refined from the essence of lunar light. Outside the formation, just as he arrived at the luminous barrier, the system's attribute panel materialized before Tong Yi. He discerned the shifting brilliance of the Grand Formation, devoid of any welcoming gestures. He comprehended the situation entirely. Even Nuwa, along with the formidable beings who had recently lavished him with praise, now wished to keep him at bay from the colorful gourds, feigning indifference. He understood their stance well. To speak frankly, had it been an ordinary treasure, Tong Yi would not have shown much interest. Yet the matter at hand is that the seven-colored gourd vine holds immense significance. Each of the seven gourds harbors a distinct treasure. For instance, the renowned purple gold gourd, which, when called upon, ensnares anyone who responds, provided their cultivation is sufficiently advanced. Then there is the purple-white gourd, containing the celestial slaying flying knife, which can sever a head with but a turn and a command. Moreover, beyond the seven gourds, Tong Yi is most preoccupied with the nine heavens Shirong and the gourd vine that yields these seven gourds. Though seemingly unremarkable, these two treasures are of paramount importance. They are the sacred artifacts essential for Nuwa's creation of humanity, both indispensable for the path to enlightenment. Although in this lifetime he is no longer of the human race, he feels an inherent obligation to contribute in some manner to humanity. Thus, he must immerse himself in this turbulent endeavor. As for the impenetrable formations, they shall not deter him. With the grand array in place, the treasures seem beyond his reach. Yet should the array be shattered, those treasures will become attainable, and he shall strive to seize them. With a resolute voice, Tong Yi proclaimed his vow towards the grand array. His eyes shimmered with a violet light. His ears flickered slightly, and his 10 fingers wove intricate seals as he delved into the 9 palaces deduction technique in his mind. He continuously calculated the time intervals of the formation's rotations, the disparities in their realms, and the flaws in their operations. After 3 breaths, he comprehended the quantity and realms of the grand arrays with clarity. Among the 15 formations, 13 were of the post-heaven category, while 2 were of the pre-heaven category. In the domain of formations, with a moderate level of comprehension, he could utilize treasures as mediums to establish post-heaven arrays. With profound understanding, he could harness the power of heaven and earth to arrange pre-heaven formations. Therefore, among these 15 grand arrays, only the 2 pre-heaven formations warranted mention, as they surpassed his level of comprehension. One was an old acquaintance, the pre-heaven 8 trigrams array of Fuxi, and the other was the pre-heaven upper clear array laid down by the Taoist Tongtian. As for the remaining 13 formations, they were of little consequence, though a few matched his realm of understanding. With the enhancement of the 6-eared divine ability, the 9 palaces deduction technique, and the Zixiao divine eye, overcoming such formations was a trivial task for him. The sole challenge lay in the matter of time. He needed to breach the arrays before the emergence of the 7-colored gourd. Resolving this, Tong Yi hesitated not. With a strategy in place for the sequence of breaking the formations, he set his plan into motion. His violet gaze intensified as it fell upon a specific flaw within the shimmering barrier of the array. In that instant, a golden lightning bolt erupted from his hand, plunging directly into the breach. Boom! Like a thunderous roar from the heavens, the entire world quaked, reverberating through the clouds. Crack! The grand array's barrier crumbled with no resistance under the onslaught of the golden thunder, instantly fragmenting and revealing the subsequent formation. Tong Yi's eyes glimmered as, at the moment the second formation's flaw was unveiled, he unleashed a bolt of lightning from his fingertip. Thus, streams of golden thunder surged forth from his hands. The second grand array of post-heaven level, shattered. The 5th grand array of post-heaven level, destroyed. The 10th grand array, a pre-heaven formation? Wait, had the 10th grand array transformed into another post-heaven array? Obliterated. As the numerous formidable beings within the formation feigned death, no one emerged to impede Tong Yi's process of dismantling the array, which progressed remarkably smoothly. Observing, listening, deducing, and unleashing thunder, the array was shattered. At this moment, he suddenly realized that he had grown to the point where he could stand independently without the aid of a system. Behind Tong Yi, 2 celestial youths gazed in astonishment at the scene of the postnatal formations crumbling before them, rendered speechless, as if turned to stone. They recognized Tong Yi's extraordinary comprehension. Yet the art of cultivation was one matter, while the art of dismantling formations was quite another. They had not anticipated that their senior brother's mastery of formation techniques would be so terrifying. Hao Yan was astonished by Tong Yi's acute sensitivity to the flaws within the formations. With each strike, he was decisive and unyielding, directly targeting the vulnerabilities of the array. What did this signify? It indicated that Tong Yi's prowess in the realm of formation laws was equally formidable. Each time he beheld the golden thunder, it felt as if he were confronting a cataclysmic storm. Yaoqi marveled at the might of Tong Yi's thunderous laws. Recalling their previous venture to seize treasures from the mortal realm, they had devised plans, awaited the opportune moment, and made their escape. The entire process had been fraught with tension. Had she not consumed a pill at a critical juncture to force a breakthrough, she might have been overtaken by the Kuanping. Yet now, Tong Yi had matured to the point where he could brazenly contend for treasures with his own strength. How little time had passed since then. Yaoqi gazed at Tong Yi's silhouette, her eyes sparkling like stars. In stark contrast to the thunderous roars echoing from outside the formation, within it, a voice cried out, "Puffed! He has indeed breached my formation." Another exclaimed, "Crack! What? My array disk has shattered. That was a legacy from my grandfather. Huh, you are all too weak. My grand array amalgamated countless years of my insights into formation techniques. It should have been invulnerable. Damn it, I've been breached as well. It's over, my formation is next. Cacophonous cries of despair, the spitting of blood, and the shattering of array disks rang out in rapid succession. Chapter 62. I am the river of darkness, and I delight in taking you along for self-destruction. Impossible. Absolutely inconceivable. How has he achieved this? Dismantling formations as effortlessly as drinking water? Could it be that he has reached mastery in the art of formations? The disciples of sages were truly fearsome. Within the formation, the sounds of blood spattering were incessant. Among the 15 formidable beings, 10 appeared deathly pale, their eyes wide with terror. The lantern-burning Taoist looked mournfully at the array disc in his hand, now fragmented into 4 pieces. That disc had been passed down through generations. He had thought that by collaborating with numerous powerful beings to set up the formation, he could showcase this treasured heirloom. After all, he believed it was improbable that anyone could breach the 15 arrays. Little did he know, after countless years of devotion, a single use had rendered it shattered. At present, only the formations of the 3 pure ones, Fuxi and Jian, continued to operate unscathed. However, the 5 of them now displayed expressions of dread, beads of sweat the size of mung beans emerging from their foreheads, their hearts racing in panic. Had someone previously claimed that they could single-handedly breach 15 formidable formations devised by such powerful beings, they would undoubtedly have been met with derision, deemed a delusion. Yet at this moment, a palpable sense of dread consumed them. The individual outside was nothing short of extraordinary, shattering 10 formations without so much as a hint of fatigue. It was evident that their own formations were next. At this juncture, the most anxious among them was the Taoist of guidance. As fate would have it, the 11th formation was his own creation. He had employed a formation flag to establish it, yet now his trembling right hand clutched the flag in desperation. This precious item had been painstakingly obtained through subterfuge. Should he falter here today, it would be an utter waste. The Taoist of guidance never engaged in unprofitable ventures. This was intolerable. He had to cease his efforts. The Hunyuan Taoist was far too formidable. The sensation he evoked was reminiscent of the space-manipulating ape encountered previously on Buzhou Mountain, if not even more daunting. However, as his thoughts swirled, the Taoist of guidance realized that if he were to retract his formation now, he would undoubtedly incur the resentment of the 9 individuals preceding him, with the exception of the reticent Jundi. After all, they had collectively agreed to set these formations, and with the destruction of their own, they had all suffered backlash. To withdraw at this juncture would be wholly inappropriate. Contemplating this, the Taoist of guidance turned his gaze toward the 3 pure ones, respectfully stating, Taoist Taiji, considering the pace at which the 7-colored gourd emerges, it is certainly eclipsed by that of Hunyuan Taoist's dismantling of formations. Rather than endure the awkwardness of waiting for him to breach all formations successfully, would it not be wiser to halt our efforts, dismantle the grand formation, and invite Hunyuan Taoist to enter? Upon hearing the Taoist of guidance directly address him, Taoist Taiji wiped the beads of sweat from his brow, casting a sidelong glance at him. Internally, he cursed the Taoist of guidance for his cowardice. Why seek his counsel in front of so many? He had never witnessed the Taoist of guidance offer him anything first when treasures were at stake. With this thought, Taoist Taiji turned his attention back to the 7-colored gourd, ignoring the Taoist of guidance entirely, as if he were deaf. At that moment, Nuwa, the Lord of the Underworld, the Lamp Igniter, Emperor Jun, Tai, Changshi, and Zenyuanzi all cast their gazes toward the Taoist of guidance, their eyes brimming with resentment and coldness. You bald ass. Dare to withdraw and see what happens. Do you believe I would forego the gourd and self-destruct alongside you? Unlike other powerful beings who remained silent in their animosity, the Lord of the Underworld was unabashed, directly berating the Taoist of guidance. Although he called himself an ancestor, he appeared youthful, with long black hair cascading to his waist, pale skin, and blood-red eyes devoid of pupils. Clad in crimson attire, he exuded a sinister aura, starkly contrasting with the gentle, red clouds surrounding him. To the west of Mount Buzhou lies a mysterious and ominous sea of blood, formed from the foul essence that fell from Pangu after his demise. It is within this blood sea that the ancient ancestor of the underworld river was birthed from a primordial placenta. He possesses a divine ability known as the Blood Goddess Avatar. As long as the blood sea endures, his avatars can unleash the full might of his being. Even in death, he can resurrect from the depths of the blood sea. Thus, the process by which the ancestor of the underworld river contends for treasures is remarkably straightforward. Should he obtain them, all is well. If not, he will take down his adversaries in an explosive act, ensuring that none may claim the prize. At this moment, upon hearing the words of the underworld river, Jane found himself momentarily stunned, drenched in perspiration. He had devised strategies to contend with numerous formidable beings, yet he felt utterly helpless against a madman like the Underworld River. How could one respond when faced with the threat of self-detonation? Should he truly withdraw? The formation would be ruined. In an instant, Jane was engulfed in a tumultuous struggle of indecision. Just then, outside the formation, the familiar sound of thunderous lightning erupted. Cursed be it. No matter. Withdraw. Jane resolved with newfound determination, without a hint of hesitation, as he waved the formation flag to retract the array and swiftly retreated. The audacity of that rascal. The ancestor of the Underworld River, upon witnessing this, was seized with fury, emanating a terrifying aura as he pursued Jane with a surge of crimson blood energy. Friend, allow me to explain. Underworld River friend, please, remain calm. The treasure has yet to emerge. Friend, do not pursue any further. In that moment, Jane and the Underworld River transformed into two streaks of light, darting across the sky in a relentless chase, with Jane's pleas for mercy resonating throughout. Below, the 13 formidable beings watched in trepidation, their expressions betraying their anxiety, fearing that they too might be caught in the explosive aftermath of the Underworld River's wrath. Humph. Such a farce. Let us invite the Hunyuan friend to join us. At that instant, the cold voice of the primordial heavenly sovereign echoed. In the next moment, he too retracted the formation. His face bore the fury directed at Jane, yet inwardly he felt a sense of relief. The reason was simple. After Jane, it was his formation next. As one of the three pure ones, he could hardly defy the agreement. Yet with Jane breaching the accord first and engaging in such antics with the Underworld River, he found an excuse to withdraw his formation as well. At this moment, upon hearing the words of the primordial heavenly sovereign, the other formidable beings present were left in a state of bewilderment, particularly Laozi, Tongtian, and Fushi. With this turn of events, only the three of them remained in the formation. Were they truly to face the Hunyuan friend directly? Could they withstand it? Certainly not. Withdraw. 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 Almost simultaneously, the three individuals exchanged a mere glance before retracting their respective grand formations. Fushi was quite pleased. His innate 8 trigrams formation had been breached once before, appearing intact, yet riddled with flaws during operation. The opportunity to withdraw was undoubtedly advantageous. Laozi and Tongtian's thoughts were even more straightforward. With the formations dismantled, what purpose did their presence serve? At that very moment, all protective arrays vanished. Suddenly, Tong Yi, somewhat dazed, emerged before everyone, golden lightning crackling in his hands. Chapter 63, The Purple Gold Gourd. Laozi approaches the quasi-saint. Where have the formations gone? Tong Yi was utterly bewildered. Soon, he realized, much like the numerous powerful beings present, why are all of you here? Were these formations yours? He surveyed the 15 mighty figures around him, his starry eyes revealing a blend of astonishment, realization, and displeasure. The silence in the air was palpable. At that instant, aside from the relentless pursuit of Mingyi and Jiejing in the distance, every powerful being who locked eyes with Tong Yi felt a tremor in their hearts. They silently lamented their predicament. The emotions reflected in Tong Yi's gaze were instantly deciphered by them. His astonishment stemmed from their unexpected presence. His realization came from understanding the existence of 15 formations, and his displeasure was rooted in blaming them for deliberately setting up barriers to prevent his entry. In an instant, a wave of panic washed over the assembled beings. Their resentment towards Jiejing peaked. Originally, their plan was to jointly obstruct the disciples of the saint, seize the treasures, and depart without a trace, avoiding any awkwardness. They never anticipated that the saint's disciple would be so formidable, nor did they foresee that among the crowd, someone would breach the agreement first. Now, with the treasures yet to emerge, the saint's disciple stood before them, making any pretense impossible. It was disastrous. If the other party held a grudge and barred them from entering the Purple Cloud Palace, what would they do? They could not afford to miss the third sermon, which was crucial for the transition from Great Luo Golden Immortal to Saint. Esteemed Taoist, we were discussing the Tao and did not realize your presence. This is indeed a lapse in our hospitality. Please forgive us. Just then, one figure stepped forward, bowing to Tong Yi. Clad in a patched, tattered robe and wearing a disingenuous smile, it was none other than Zhuanti. Fully aware that Jiejing's earlier actions had incited the ire of many, Zhuanti hurried to apologize to Tong Yi, concocting an excuse on behalf of the assembled powerful beings. The radiant lamp Taoist gracefully approached Tong Yi, offering a smile and saying, "My esteemed Taoist friend, we have truly become too engrossed in our discussion. I sincerely apologize. Please forgive us." Upon hearing these words, the expressions of many formidable figures present turned slightly crimson. It was astonishing that Zhuanti and Radiant Lamp could maintain their composure while fabricating such a falsehood in front of so many. Yet, they found themselves incapable of doing the same. Moreover, who would genuinely believe such an excuse? Engaging in discourse was one thing, But who would expect to be so oblivious to an outsider that they were left bloodied by their own backlash? Was that not preposterous? However, to their surprise, Tong Yi's face broke into a smile upon hearing the words of Zhuan Ti and Radiant Lamp. Ah, I see. No wonder those two Taoist friends are still up there demonstrating their techniques. I had mistakenly assumed that you all did not wish for my participation in the emergence of this treasure, he said with a grin, stepping forward to surpass Zhuan Ti and Radiant Lamp, arriving before the seven-colored gourd vine. In the heavens, the guide, who was being relentlessly pursued by the river of oblivion, nearly stumbled upon hearing Tong Yi's words. What sort of technique competition is this? Just look at that madman behind me. Does he appear to be competing at all? Fellow Taoists, lend me your voices. The guide called out below. However, no one paid heed to his plight. Instead, his outburst awakened the other formidable beings, who brightened at the prospect. Regardless of whether Tong Yi believed Zhuan Ti's words, a stepping stone had indeed been established. At this point, they could no longer concern themselves with the diminished odds of obtaining the treasure. The three pure ones took the lead, stepping forward to bow to Tong Yi. We greet you, esteemed Taoist friend. We were unaware of your descent to the mortal realm. We have been remiss. One of them continued. Allow me to introduce this treasure to you. It is known as the seven-colored gourd vine, and each gourd contains a different treasure. Now that you have arrived, the prime opportunity shall surely fall into your hands. It is our honor to bear witness to the emergence of this treasure alongside you. The two celestial youths also descended to the mortal realm. Such an occurrence was rare, and perhaps they too might seize an opportunity this time. At this moment, the heavenly pool of the vast sky settled behind Tong Yi. Many formidable beings began to engage in pleasantries. The heavenly pool responded with a cold demeanor, entirely oblivious to the intricacies of social etiquette. In their view, had it not been for their senior brother breaking the formations consecutively, they would not have been able to enter at all. Now, these individuals were wishing them luck and seizing opportunities. How utterly hypocritical. After exchanging insincere pleasantries, Tong Yi turned his gaze toward the two streaks of light still darting about in the heavens. Curiosity etched across his face. Why have these two not reached a conclusion yet? I just heard the guide calling out something. Upon hearing this, Zhuan Ti intended to ask Tong Yi to intervene with the River of Oblivion, but was interrupted by the primordial Taoist, who spoke first. No worries. He mentioned he wishes to eat peanuts. Oh, I see. That simply won't do, Tong Yi replied earnestly. Eating peanuts while flying can lead to quite a mess. Don't you think? Indeed, it seems our esteemed Taoist friend possesses considerable experience. Jin Yuanzi chimed in at that moment. As the crowd mingled, the atmosphere grew exceptionally harmonious. Only Zhuan Ti remained in a daze, gazing upwards at the two streaks of light in the sky, feeling somewhat bewildered. Did Jie really say he wanted to eat peanuts? Boom. At that very moment, the seven gourds trembled slightly, their emanating aura reaching a peak. They simultaneously erupted into 7 different resplendent beams of light. After piercing the heavens, the brilliance receded entirely. Concurrently, the 7 gourds began to sway incessantly on their vines. In this instant, everyone understood that this treasure was on the verge of manifesting. The numerous powerful beings promptly ceased their smiles and shifted their positions. Tong Yi stood at the southernmost point of the 7-colored gourd vine, while the other 13 powerful entities surrounded it from all directions. What intrigued Tong Yi was the sight of the Sanqing, Fuxi, and Nuo forming a cohesive group. However, he did not expect that Emperor Jun, Tai Yi, and Changxu would also join forces and stand together. Among the 15 powerful beings present, excluding the 2 in the sky, only Randeng and Zhuan Ti seemed somewhat isolated. Soon, as each individual occupied their designated space, the previously amicable atmosphere instantaneously transformed into one of palpable tension. The various powerful beings activated their mental techniques, elevating their states to the peak, their unwavering gazes fixed upon the 7 gourds. Even the Hao Yi Yaoqi behind Tong Yi was no exception. Only Tong Yi remained devoid of any celestial energy fluctuations, lazily scratching his ear, seemingly indifferent. Crack! At that moment, the purple gold gourd was the first to detach from the vine. Boom! Before the purple gold gourd could fall, an overwhelming aura erupted, directly dominating the entire scene. Its oppressive force had already entered the realm of the Hunyuan Jingxian, a level of power capable of extinguishing lives. In an instant, including the 2 streaks of light above, all powerful beings felt a tremor throughout their bodies, utterly suppressed. Esteemed ones, this treasure has a profound affinity with me. I shall graciously accept it first. At the same time, a voice of laughter echoed forth. In that instant of dominance over the crowd, Laozi Daoist transformed a wisp of pure energy into a mighty hand, reaching for the purple gold gourd. Damn, Tai Ching has actually entered the quasi-saint realm. Huh, when did my elder brother achieve quasi-sainthood? Hunyuan Jingxian. Alas, this gourd is beyond my reach. Upon witnessing that Laozi Daoist had entered the quasi-saint realm, All the powerful beings gasped in astonishment and simultaneously sighed. With such a realm as a Hunyuan Jinxian, who could still contend for the purple gold gourd? Whoosh! Just at that critical juncture, including lousy Daoist. Everyone felt a blur before their eyes. The next moment, the sound of a crack resonated in their ears, and the powerful beings, who had thought the outcome was already settled, widened their eyes in disbelief. The colossal hand, transformed by the essence of Tai Ching, shattered with a thunderous roar. The laughter of Laozi still echoed from afar, while the purple gold gourd had already changed hands. It had inexplicably found its way into the grasp of a shadowy figure. As the distant peaks continued to resonate with Laozi's laughter, the figure, now transfixed, bore an expression of utter astonishment. Clad in the oppressive aura of a quasi-saint, he was juxtaposed with the distant echoes. In that moment, it seemed almost absurd. You, the power of the law of time. Laozi awoke from his stupor, his ancient eyes widening in disbelief as he gazed at Tong Yi. At that instant, he abandoned the term fellow Daoist, his voice laced with equal parts astonishment and fury. For it was at the very moment he unleashed his quasi-saintly pressure to dominate the scene that Tong Yi, with an unearthly speed, shattered his mystical hand and seized the purple gold gourd, returning to his original position. What he had once regarded as his own, the purple gold gourd, now lay in the hands of Tong Yi. The extraordinary speed exhibited by Tong Yi led Laozi to attribute it to the law of time. Yet, he could not fathom how his opponent had accomplished such a feat without employing any magical power. Was this Hunyuan Daoist also on the verge of quasi-saintship? Or perhaps he surpassed even Laozi in cultivation? Ding. Successfully shattered the Tai Ching mystical hand. Ding. Acquired feedback on the Tai Ching mystical hand. Merely a slight maneuver, of little significance. Tong Yi remarked with a casual wave of his hand, tossing the gourd gently in his left palm, all while smiling at Laozi, who appeared to be interrogating him. Despite some appearing outwardly nonchalant, as if they had performed an inconsequential act, they were secretly examining the attributes of the purple gold gourd. Name: Innate purple gold gourd. Rank: Innate spiritual treasure. Restrictions: 7963 layers. Details: a product of the 10 exceptional innate spiritual roots, the 7-colored gourd vine. Function 1. Placing spiritual pills within will not diminish their efficacy. Rather, the longer they are stored, the more potent they become. Function 2. Upon calling a name, one can draw the person inside, transforming them into a concentrated liquid within 3 breaths. At this moment, upon witnessing the attribute panel of the purple gold gourd, Tong Yi felt a surge of joy within. Among the 7 gourds, the purple gold one was the most precious. A rule-based magical treasure. It was a rarity in the primordial realm. This artifact was indeed worthy of utilizing the system. Indeed, just as Laozi had suspected, Tong Yi had indeed invoked the law of time. Although he was still a novice in its application, at the very moment Laozi reveled in his triumph. Tong Yi had accelerated his pace and employed the system, shattering Laozi's mystical hand. Indeed, it is precisely for this reason that Laozi found himself astounded by the absence of any celestial energy fluctuations, yet he managed to shatter the magical hand. This was due to the fact that he wielded a system more formidable than all his own divine abilities combined. Upon discerning the attributes of this gourd, Tong Yi delightfully stored it within the system space. It was at this very moment that the other formidable beings present finally grasped the gravity of the situation. What had transpired? The law of time. Fellow Hunyuan had employed the law of time. To their astonishment, the law of time proved to be exceedingly formidable. After all, Daoist Tai Ching had already transcended to the Hunyuan golden immortal realm. Alas, how could they possibly obtain the other gourds now? Congratulations to the Daoist for acquiring the purple gold gourd. Apart from the 3 pure ones, the other powerful beings promptly bowed in congratulations to Tong Yi. They understood all too well that when Laozi unleashed his quasi-saintly pressure, suppressing the entire assembly with his singular might, the purple gold gourd was no longer within their reach. While they were indeed astonished that Tong Yi could seize a treasure from Laozi, their sentiments were largely tinged with schadenfreude. After all, it was a case of a friend's misfortune is a blessing for oneself. Some even silently chuckled at Laozi's expense. What of being a quasi-saint? He still suppressed us all and accepted the outcome, ultimately benefiting fellow Hunyuan. The crowd did not engage in lengthy pleasantries, for the other gourds were also on the verge of detaching, ready to fall at any moment. Approximately half a stick of incense later, bang, 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 3 successive sounds echoed. Remarkably, the purple-white, purple-black, and purple-yellow gourds simultaneously broke free from their vines and fell to the ground. The many powerful beings, who had long been poised for action, sprang into motion once more. Boom. Laozi, as always, unleashed his full pressure. This time, he was no longer careless. He refrained from acting alone to claim treasures, instead coordinating with Yuan Shi and Tong Tian to strike together. 3 streams of pure energy coalesced into 3 colossal hands, reaching for the 3 gourds. Suddenly, a thunderous bell toll resonated in the ears of every powerful being. The chime was resounding. At that moment, heaven and earth dimmed, and the universe quaked. All things seemed to be momentarily frozen. Almost simultaneously, Changshi and Shihi stood behind Di Jun, their 4 delicate hands resting upon his shoulders. In an instant, Di Jun's aura erupted, revealing that he had entered the late stage of Deluo. With the enhancements from Changshi and Shihi, he was as if endowed with divine aid, and the prepared river diagram flew forth. Seizing this fleeting opportunity, the river diagram soared past the 3 pure one's magical hands, directly retrieving the purple-white gourd. The purple-white gourd harbored the ability to forge the immortal-slaying flying knife. Withdraw. With the treasure in hand, Di Jun bellowed. The next moment, as the reverberations of the bell faded, heaven and earth returned to normal. Di Jun, Tai, and Changshi Shihi had transformed into 4 blazing flames, hastily fleeing into the distance. At that moment, the purple-yellow and purple-black gourds were seized by 2 colossal hands. The purple-yellow gourd, imbued with the primordial essence of water and fire, was claimed by Tong Tian. The purple-black gourd, containing the essence of chaos, fell into the hands of Laozi. "Damn it! Leave it for me," roared the primordial Taoist in fury. Enraged and humiliated, he transformed into a beam of light, pursuing the direction in which Emperor Jun and Tai had fled. The reason for his agitation was that the purple-white gourd in Emperor Jun's possession was originally intended for him. Yet, this was merely a facade. In this moment, what Primordial truly desired was the Chaos Bell, for he had recognized it. In comparison, the diminutive gourd was insignificant. "Calm down, brother. He has already grown formidable," Laozi shouted anxiously, hastening alongside Tong Tian towards the vanishing figure of Primordial. As he mentioned, Emperor Jun had been patient and, unbeknownst to all, had already attained the late stage of Great Luo. Coupled with the assistance of the Tai Chaos Bell and Changshi Xia, how could Primordial hope to seize them now? The entire process, though seemingly intricate, unfolded in the span of merely 3 breaths, from the moment the 3 gourds detached to the emergence of the Chaos Bell and the subsequent departure of Emperor Jun, Tai, and the 3 pure ones. By the time the onlookers comprehended what had transpired, 7 individuals had already vanished from this realm. It was astonishing. The 3-legged golden crow had unknowingly ascended to such heights. What was that chime? It appeared capable of suspending time and space. With 3 gourds gone, only the green, red, and blue remained. The crowd gasped in awe. Only Tong Yi, deep in thought, gazed towards the direction in which Emperor Jun and the others had disappeared. In the days of creation, the celestial axe had split into 3, vanquishing the chaotic essence and stabilizing the elements of earth, wind, water, and fire. Among them was the Chaos Bell. Although he was aware that the Chaos Bell was a companion treasure of Tai, he had never felt the might of this primordial artifact until now, and thus he had been ensnared. He pondered what might be gained should the Chaos Bell be shattered. Could there be insights into the laws of time? Contemplating this, he took out a small notebook and made a note of the Chaos Bell. Then, Tong Yi shifted his gaze to the remaining 3 gourds. Although he had already acquired one, and was not permitted to take another according to the rules, since Hao Yin and Yao Qi had accompanied him, he still yearned to contest for another on their behalf. Chapter 65. The Self-Destruction of the Underworld River. Are you serious? Tong Yi looked at the 3 remaining gourds on the vine, his mind beginning to recall impressions of these gourds from his past life. The purple-green gourd contained the essence of heaven and earth, capable of elevating treasures placed within it to a higher tier. The purple-blue gourd housed a banner known as the Summoning Banner, destined to become the ancestral treasure of the future demon clan, capable of summoning countless demons when waved. Crimson. Among them lies the primordial red sand, which, once invoked, can ensnare celestial forms, obliterate divine bodies, and extinguish celestial souls. In that instant, Tong Yi made his choice, verdant purple. After all, it could elevate the treasure's grade, a rarity in any realm. Having selected the gourd, Tong Yi then surveyed the remaining 8 formidable beings present, Fuxi and Yuhua, Xinyuanzi and Hongyun, Randang and Zhuanti, along with the 2 shameless figures in the heavens, Jane and the madman Mingi, who were relentlessly pursuing, their curses echoing through the air. Tong Yi accounted for them as well. For the cosmos was still in flux, and anything was possible. While reflecting on the potential hidden cards of these individuals, he mentally simulated the forthcoming events. Soon, he devised a strategy. He began to communicate discreetly with Hao Yin and the other formidable beings, whose expressions were equally grave. Only 3 gourds remained. If they failed to seize one, their effort would be in vain. With the atmosphere at a tense peak, 3 distinct sounds erupted. The last 3 gourds had finally detached. "I want 1 gourd." Zhuanti could no longer restrain himself and shouted. Simultaneously, he unleashed the 7 treasures Miao Tree. which radiated a resplendent sevenfold brilliance toward the three gourds. What a shameless individual, claiming to want one, yet truly desiring all three. I also want one, exclaimed the Taoist Randang as he summoned a glazed lamp. Once ignited, the wick blazed fiercely, sweeping toward the purple-green gourd. The two were a formidable force. Yet, how could the other powerful beings remain passive? Xinyuanzi and Fuxi struck simultaneously. Xinyuanzi flipped through his earth book, and a layer of earthy, yellow membrane suddenly emerged, directly intercepting the radiant sevenfold light. Though the seven treasures Miao tree was reputed to summon all things of the primordial chaos, the membrane generated by the earth's power effectively countered it. Fuxi's innate 8 trigrams disc began to spin, and the familiar yin-yang fish reappeared, transforming into a yin-yang grinding mill that obstructed the flames from Randang's lamp. Amidst this rapid exchange of magical prowess, 5 beams of light surged toward the three gourds. Among them, a single rainbow-hued light surged ahead, its speed transcending the flow of this realm, swiftly reaching the purple-green gourd and claiming it. With the assistance of Tong Yi's temporal law, the Yaoqi secured the purple-green gourd first. At that moment, the other 4 beams of light finally arrived at the gourd's location. Among them, the 2 swiftest were Nuwa and Hongyun. Nuwa waved her sleeve, and the ethereal, entwining celestial ribbon around her suddenly surged forth, ensnaring the purple-blue gourd. Crimson clouds billowed from the mouth of Hongyun, swiftly enveloping the purplish-red gourd within moments. At this point, the last 3 gourds had found their respective masters. Yet, the 4th figure, witnessing this spectacle, was unwilling to concede. If I cannot possess it, neither shall you. A voice, tinged with madness, erupted. Everyone turned to see that it was the once pursuing Mingi. Clearly, his prior fury and insanity had all been mere theatrics, a ruse to seize the gourd while others were unawares. However, he ultimately lagged behind Yaoqi, Nuwa, and Hongyun. In a fit of utter madness, he exploded. In the next instant, Mingi's form expanded dramatically, unleashing a terrifying energy from his being. Boom! The earth-shattering roar reverberated through the heavens. Vivid crimson mist instantly spread, engulfing the entire mountain peak. The self-detonation of a great Luo golden immortal, especially one emanating from Mingi's blood mist, was a force of unimaginable power. Each droplet of blood mist darted through the air like a razor, slicing through everything in its path. Damn it! A madman! Flee! At this moment, all the powerful beings who had managed to react could only roar in desperation, retreating hastily. Rumbling. In the next heartbeat, the entirety of this realm was consumed by the blood mist. The terrifying waves swept outward for thousands of miles. Where they struck, the heavens crumbled and the earth sank. Countless spaces were torn asunder, revealing the chaotic void beyond. Fortunately, the heavens sensed the calamity, and the vast power of the heavenly laws swiftly manifested, enveloping this realm and rapidly mending the ravaged spatial rifts. At this moment, the world seemed to descend into an epic of silence. 100,000 miles away, 7 figures hurtled through the air: Fuxi, Nuwa, Xinyuanzi, Hongyun, Jane, Zhuanti, and Randang. Although they had summoned treasures and unleashed divine powers for protection at the critical moment, each one bore tattered garments and numerous wounds, incessantly spilling blood. Damn it! Truly a madman. How could one believe he was jesting, only to find he was serious? How can such madness exist in this world? From now on, we must oppose his participation in treasure hunts. Who knows if he will self-destruct the moment he speaks. From now on, whenever treasures emerge, I will not participate if Mingi is present. Several powerful beings looked on in terror at the mountains that had once nurtured the 7-colored gourd vines, their mouths filled with curses. Yet, what mountains were visible before them? The expanse of 1,000 miles had already been utterly obliterated. The once lush and vibrant sevenfold mountains had now transformed into a desolate wasteland. Deep chasms crisscrossed the land, the earth torn by fathomless fissures, as the heavens were stained red with tainted blood. Such was the scene. Like the Western world after the great calamity of the primordial age, curses escaped my lips. I had thought he was truly intent on pursuing me, only to discover that he ultimately sought to seize treasure instead. Is he mad? He is more cunning than anyone else. At this moment, the guide Taoist was flushed with rage, unleashing a torrent of invective. For the first time since their emergence, they suffered such a loss. Not only had they failed to acquire a single treasure, but they also bore wounds. After venting his pent-up fury, the guide coldly swept his gaze over the gourds held by Nuwa and Hongyun, his eyes flickering several times before he, accompanied by Zhuanti, turned and swiftly departed. As previously stated, the two of them feared injuries above all else. If they lingered, they worried about being surrounded and slain. Likewise, the lantern-bearing Taoist, who had also failed to acquire any treasure, cast a jealous glance at Hongyun and Nuwa before suppressing his internal injuries and hastily retreating. In a heartbeat, only Fuxi, Nuwa, Xinyuanzi and Hong Yun remained in this realm. Where are our companions, the Hunyuan Taoist and the two celestial youths? Nuwa exclaimed, her eyes wide with astonishment after regaining her vitality from the medicinal elixir. Upon hearing her words, Fushi, Xinyuanzi, and Hong Yun were all taken aback, their expressions reflecting their surprise as they hurriedly gazed towards the direction where the earth had collapsed. Could it be? Surely not. Chapter 66. The Acquisition of the Nine Heavens Soil Awe? Indeed. What has become of the Hunyuan Taoist and the two celestial youths? They cannot still be inside, can they? The four mighty beings exhibited expressions of astonishment. In the moments following the explosion of the Mingi, amidst the crisis, everyone had been preoccupied with their own survival, not contemplating anything beyond that. Now, having regained their composure, they each employed their ocular supernatural powers to scan the blood-soaked terrain before them. After a brief search yielded no results, they turned their gazes towards all directions, yet still found no trace of any figures. Surely they are unscathed? The Hunyuan Taoist comprehends the laws of time and wields boundless magical power. He must have already departed. Xinyuanzi, licking his lips, spoke without conviction. Yes. The two celestial youths are disciples of a saint and undoubtedly possess life-preserving abilities. There is no need for our concern, Fushi chimed in, his complexion pale as he concurred. Otherwise, how could it be said that the disciples of a saint perished here? Even if it was due to the Mingi's actions, they would still bear some responsibility. If the saint were to become enraged, what would become of us? With that, Fushi felt a chill run down his spine, unwilling to linger in this place of strife. After bowing to Xinyuanzi and Hong Yun, he turned without a backward glance, leading Nuwa away. Xinyuanzi returned the gesture before departing with Hong Yun, transforming into a streak of light as they swiftly left the area. Thus, this realm was left devoid of life, a testament to the devastation wrought, bearing witness to the treasures that once graced it. As the four of them incessantly chattered, Tong Yi, along with his companions, had already descended from the heavenly realm. This time, he had amassed quite a bounty. A radiant smile adorned Tong Yi's face as he gazed at the vine in his hand, still clinging to clods of earth, his heart brimming with joy. What are those colorful gourds? This, indeed, is the true treasure. Behind him, however, Hao Yin and Yao Qi appeared pale, haunted by lingering fears. They could not help but relive the harrowing events that had just transpired. In the moment of the Nether River's explosion, when the blood mist erupted, the fifth figure rushing toward the gourd was none other than Hao Yin. At that critical juncture, he had drawn forth the celestial measuring rod that Tong Yi had lent him, placing it before himself to shield both him and Yao Qi. With the aid of Yao Qi, empowered by the laws of time, they had swiftly retreated from the blast radius. Their every action had followed Tong Yi's meticulously laid plans. Yet, they had not anticipated the unexpected chaos caused by the Nether River. Fortunately, they emerged unscathed. As for Tong Yi, the moment the myriad powerful beings were drawn to the gourd, engaging in conflict, he had discreetly utilized the spatial laws to extract the colorful gourd vine. The Nether River was truly mad. Yao Qi patted her non-existent chest, exhaling a deep sigh. Her complexion was somewhat pallid, as the perilous scene had drained much of her energy. Thankfully, everything remained under her senior brother's control. With this thought, Yao Qi clutched the purple-green gourd in her hands and looked at Tong Yi before her. A profound sense of security washed over her, banishing all negative emotions from her heart. If it weren't for my senior brother lending me this celestial measuring rod, we would surely have been consumed by the blood mist. That Nether River was utterly deranged. Hao Yin, trembling slightly as he held the celestial measuring rod, spoke with indignation. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi cast a resigned glance at Hao Yin. You, having been by the side of our master since childhood, have naturally seen the finest treasures of the primordial world. Yet for them, every treasure comes at the cost of life. Hao Yin shook his head, still perplexed, gazing at Tong Yi with innocent eyes. But surely, life is far more valuable than treasures. Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback. This statement was indeed true, yet human nature transcends notions of right and wrong. He chose not to elaborate further. Never mind. You will understand in due time. Tong Yi had already resolved that he must allow Hao Yin to journey alone in the future. Otherwise, with such a disposition, how could he ever become the Celestial Emperor? He would surely be outmaneuvered by other saints. Senior brother, here, the gourd is for you. At that moment, Yao Qi, cradling the purple-green gourd in her hands, presented it to Tong Yi as if offering a precious gift. Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback. His 6 ears divine sense had been continuously operational. At this instant, as Yao Qi offered him the gourd, it was entirely sincere, devoid of any pretense. This gesture warmed Tong Yi's heart, akin to a gentle current flowing within, washing away his myriad doubts about this primordial realm since his arrival. While others contended fiercely for treasures, risking life and limb, here in his presence, it was altogether different. With the addition of the celestial measuring tool from last time, Yao Qi has already bestowed treasures upon him twice. Each time he seized a treasure, it was a perilous dance between life and death. Yet, Yao Qi unhesitatingly offered him the precious artifacts, leaving Tong Yi with a sense of shame. These treasures are exceedingly valuable, capable of elevating the items contained within to a higher grade. Tong Yi raised his hand and playfully ruffled Yao Qi's hair, a gesture of both retribution and affection. After explaining the function of the purple-green gourd, he pushed it back towards her, saying, "You should keep it. I have no use for it." He then lifted the vine and the soil in his hand, declaring, "These two are the true treasures born from this event." Upon hearing this, Hao Yin and Yao Qi were momentarily taken aback. They furrowed their brows in unison, their round, glistening eyes fixed upon the vine and the peculiar soil in Tong Yi's grasp, their faces reflecting confusion. This soil? Could it be the legendary Nine Heavens Shirong? Soon, Yao Qi's phoenix eyes sparkled with surprise as she gazed at Tong Yi and inquired. It seemed there were records in the scripture pavilion that indicated Nine Heavens Shirong was the primordial earth of the Chaos Green Lotus, which fell into the wilderness after the creation of the world. It contained unique spiritual energy and life characteristics. Could this truly be it? Hao Yin echoed the information about Nine Heavens Shirong, his expression one of disbelief. Indeed, this substance is Nine Heavens Shirong, capable of defense, restraining the waters, and even creating life. With boundless applications. Tong Yi nodded, secretly astonished. He had only learned such details from the system's introduction. These two prodigious scholars recited the information fluently, their knowledge commendable. Yet they lacked the ability to apply it. It was only when he unearthed this item and presented it to them that they realized its true value. They had merely studied theoretical texts. To think it was genuinely Nine Heavens Shirong, that was undoubtedly more precious than these gourds. Receiving confirmation, Yao Qi's eyes sparkled with admiration as she gazed at Tong Yi, saying, "You truly have an eye for treasures, senior brother. Among so many powerful beings present, only you recognized it." Hao Yin enthusiastically nodded, expressing his respect. "Indeed. Moreover, you even managed to excavate it without them noticing." Tong Yi's previously proud smile faltered. He shot Hao Yin a glare. "If you can't speak properly, then refrain from inflated praise, will you?" "What do you mean sneakily? I acted with complete transparency." "And what about this vine?" Hao Yin inquired further. Tong Yi's figure flickered as he no longer lingered, soaring eastward while saying, "You will find out in due time." Hao Yin and Yao Qi hurriedly followed. "Where are we headed now, senior brother?" Hao Yin pressed on. Tong Yi, without looking back, replied, "To meet my disciple, your nephew. We shall return together to the Zixiao Palace." Chapter 67. A woman mastering the 4 laws of ice, rain, frost, and snow. This is not good. Someone is attacking my formation. High above the eastern land, Tong Yi, who was originally guiding Yao Qi and Hao Yin to meet the 6-eared macaque, suddenly felt a tremor in his heart. The formation he mentioned. It was just before the second sermon that he had laid the 9-palace true fire array around the 6-eared macaque. After all, the 6-eared macaque now possessed the bloodline of the Kunping and had cultivated the Zixiao Heart Sutra. It was highly likely that he would attract the attention of powerful beings. Therefore, Tong Yi had deliberately placed the true fire seed of the 9 heavens at the heart of the array and set up numerous spatial traps around it, enhanced with the laws of thunder as hidden dangers. With such an array of concealment measures, ordinarily, no one would be able to detect this formation. However, Tong Yi did not anticipate that Murphy's Law was ever present. The very things he feared the most were precisely what transpired. The array was discovered and was currently under siege. "Senior brother? Someone is sabotaging the formation protecting my nephew?" Hao Tian and Yao Qi instantly grasped the situation, their eyes narrowing, a murderous intent flickering within. Apart from their master, Tong Yi was the person they held closest to their hearts. As Tong Yi's disciples, they naturally regarded him as family and treated him with kindness. Yet now, someone dared to provoke death by targeting their nephew. How could they not be enraged? Indeed, this is a spatial coordinate. You are too slow. I shall take the lead. Without further ado, Tong Yi flipped his right hand, channeling the power of spatial laws from his palm, coalescing it into a jade talisman. After tossing it to Hao Tian and Yao Qi, he unleashed both the spatial and temporal laws from his body. Boom. In the next moment, the space ahead shattered, and he transformed into a golden lightning bolt, vanishing into the void. It was no wonder he felt such urgency within. After all, he bore a sense of debt towards the 6-eared macaque. Moreover, the fluctuations emitted by the array were limited. It was only upon stepping onto the eastern land that he sensed the array was under attack. What did this indicate? It suggested that the array had not only come under siege now, but it had likely been under assault for quite some time, on the verge of collapse at any moment. How could Tong Yi remain calm? As he observed the spatial rift mending itself, Yao Qi's delicate face hardened, her heart growing increasingly anxious. Throughout their trials, senior brother had always remained remarkably composed, unperturbed by any crisis. Yet today, his unusual behavior revealed the weight he placed on this disciple. However, they found themselves powerless to assist, even becoming a hindrance. It's all your fault. You're too slow. Otherwise, we would have arrived earlier. Yao Qi furrowed her brow, angrily punching Hao Tian's arm. Ouch! Hao Tian grimaced in pain but dared not protest. He could only clench his fists, gazing resolutely ahead. He vowed to train diligently and become someone useful to his senior brother. Stop! You cannot break this array. It was set by my master, who has gone to the Zishao Palace to listen to the teachings. When he returns, you shall regret it. In the vast expanse of the eastern lands, an unnamed mountain range looms. At this moment, the six-eared macaque stands upon a colossal stone within the Nine Palaces' true fire array, continuously shouting towards a figure outside the formation. The array has fully unleashed its fiery might, with the Nine Heavens' true fire enveloping the entire protective dome, as countless flames swirl in all directions, fiercely safeguarding the six-eared macaque. Outside the array, however, the entire realm has been shrouded in frost. The biting wind howls mercilessly, and snow descends incessantly from the heavens, transforming into icy blades that besiege the Nine Palaces' true fire array. The source of this turmoil is a woman, tall and ethereal, her skin as pristine as snow. Clad in a flowing purple robe that accentuates her graceful figure, she sits elegantly upon a throne sculpted from ice and snow. Oh, is it truly so formidable? Can you truly ascend to the Zishao Palace? I am quite frightened, she taunts with a playful smile, raising her chin delicately. You, the six-eared macaque, confronted with this unyielding woman, blushes with anger, hopping about on the stone in frustration, scratching his head. He feels both helpless and indignant. Ever since his master departed to seek enlightenment, he has devoted himself to his cultivation, striving to comprehend the Zishao Heart Sutra. Yet, he never anticipated the difficulty of this endeavor. After more than 3,000 years, he barely grasped the fundamentals. Just as he began to immerse himself in his studies, this woman appeared outside the array. Without reason, she demanded he become her spirit pet and immediately commenced her assault on the formation. Initially, the six-eared macaque had great confidence in the array, for it was laid down by his master. However, he was unprepared for the sheer terror of the woman's power. With a mere flick of her hand, the once verdant and vibrant realm was blanketed in ice and snow, transforming it into a wintry wasteland. Countless snowflakes continued to descend relentlessly, assaulting the array as if they were free of cost. Fire and ice are inherently antagonistic. At first, the array proved formidable, incinerating all the snowflakes. Yet, ultimately, the array lacked a master to control it, relying solely on the Nine Heavens' true fire's essence for defense. As time passed, the flames of the fire essence visibly waned under the relentless onslaught of ice and snow. If this continued, the array would surely falter. Filled with rage at this thought, the six-eared macaque was distraught, knowing that the day he had agreed upon with his master was fast approaching. He realized that he had barely reached the pinnacle of Earth Immortal, let alone the celestial immortal realm. When the time came, his master would undoubtedly leave him behind. Even if you shatter this array, I shall never accompany you. Abandon this hope. You are doomed. I sense it. My master is coming. Wait until my master returns. He will undoubtedly press you to the ground and crush you. In a fit of rage, Lu Er continuously shouted angrily at the figure outside the formation, hurling the most unflattering words he could muster. His youthful and furious voice reverberated throughout the realm. To Lu Er's dismay, no matter how he screamed, the figure outside the formation appeared to see through his bluster, remaining utterly indifferent. Oh, so formidable. Is there no one under heaven but the witch? I shall see if your master can indeed bring me down to the ground. The woman seated on the frozen throne remarked with a slight curl of her lips. Yet, the chilling undertone of her words intensified the fury of the ice and snow in this realm. Whoosh! Miles away, the fabric of space rippled as Tong Yi emerged from a rift, enveloped in the dual forces of time and space. His ears twitched, and his eyes glimmered with a purple light. Upon hearing the exchange between Lu Er and the woman, and observing the surroundings, Tong Yi's lips twitched slightly. The powers of ice, rain, snow, and frost had all reached their zenith, manifesting a vast realm of ice and snow. In the primordial heavens, only one person could achieve such a feat. His disciple dares to claim he can press her down? How could I be so impressive without knowing? What kind of troublesome disciple have I taken in? Chapter 68. Ancestor Witch Xianming, a world of ice and fire. Why is this boy so adept at attracting trouble? High in the sky, Tong Yi sighed while pressing his forehead. Although he felt a sense of relief knowing Lu Er was unharmed, the woman he had provoked was certainly no ordinary adversary. The mastery of minor laws leads to a domain, while the mastery of major laws creates an entire realm. The ease with which she established her icy world reveals her profound understanding of the ice and snow laws, surpassing even his comprehension of the thunder laws. Among the primordial heavens, the only woman capable of such mastery was one he could only think of, Xianming, one of the 12 ancestor witches. Among the 12 ancestor witches, only 2 are women, the benevolent Hutu and the merciless Xianming. Unlike the inherently kind Hutu, Xianming is entirely the opposite, cruel and heartless, precisely as depicted in previous tales. However, regardless of her nature, it was she who had instigated trouble for Lu Er. As his master, how could he stand idly by? Since I am here, why not reveal myself? Just then, a cold voice unexpectedly echoed in Tong Yi's ear. He raised an eyebrow and turned towards the sound, only to find that, at some point, the woman on the frozen throne was gazing directly at him, her eyes strikingly beautiful. Yet, the more exquisite the beauty, the greater the peril it conceals. From her piercing gaze, Tong Yi discerned